Chapter 28:39. When they passed by each other, Yang Kai smiled and nodded. The barbarian warrior stared at his back for a long time before retracting his gaze. He smiled and said, "Interesting. Although he was not a wizard, he did train his body. As the captain of the royal guards, his strength was not weaker than a great wizard. The only thing he lacked compared to those great wizards was the wizard spell that could buff the power of his people. In a one-on-one fight, no great wizard could be his opponent. But the seemingly weak great wizard just now made him eager to fight. The only ones who could make him want to fight were powerful opponents that could not be crushed. This could be seen from the other party's calm gaze. Although the gaze just now did not have the buff of a wizard spell, it was an instant burst of his fighting spirit. No great wizard could easily withstand it, but the other party did. What an interesting great sorcerer. He looked so weak, but there was an unimaginable amount of power hidden in his frail body. That guy called Wu Tu should thank me. It was because of my timely appearance that he was able to avoid being humiliated in front of everyone. In the hall, a person with an aura as deep as the sea stood there quietly with his hands behind his back, waiting for the arrival of the crowd. After more than 100 people came in, he slowly turned around. He frowned as if he was confused about something. He looked up at the crowd and said loudly, "I am the Wizard King, the 6th Wizard King of the Southern Barbarian tribe. Some of you may know me, some may have heard of me, and some may not know who I am. But it doesn't matter, because from today onwards, we will often meet. Greetings to the Wizard King, Master." Everyone put their hands on their chests and bowed. Yang Kai was also among them. His eyes flashed slightly. The 6th Wizard King. In other words, among the Wizard King of the Southern Barbarian tribe, his strength was ranked 6th. Above him, there were 5 more powerful Wizard Kings. It was unknown how many Wizard Kings were under him. Yang Kai only knew that there were no Wizard Saints in the Southern Barbarian tribe. There were only 4 Wizard Saints in the entire Barbarian tribe, and they were all in the 4 largest tribes. In the Southern Barbarian tribe, the most powerful Wizard King was a high-rank Wizard King. He didn't even know his name was Yang Kai. Most of what he knew about the Southern Barbarian tribe was taught by the village chief. As a low-level wizard, the information that the village chief had access to was too little. I believe everyone has heard that the reason why I've gathered you all here this time is because of the invasion of demon folk. 3 tribes have been destroyed. The wizard's voice was deep. It was not loud, but it reached everyone's ears clearly. When they heard that the 3 divisions had been destroyed, the 100 great wizards' expression turned cold. Those 3 divisions. None of them were weaker than the Southern Barbarian tribe. They all had a high-rank Wizard King, 100 to 200 great wizard, and thousands of wizard disciples, but they were still destroyed. In other words, if the Southern Barbarian tribe encountered such an enemy, they probably wouldn't end up well. This was no longer just a matter of the 3 divisions that had been destroyed, but a matter of the entire barbarian tribe. However, this news is already outdated. The wizard's words caused a huge commotion. Just as everyone looked at him suspiciously, he spoke again. "In the few days that we've gathered here, the Lanli tribe has been destroyed too." "What? Really? The Lanli tribe has actually been destroyed too?" It's said that the Wizard King Master of the Lanli tribe is the existence most likely to become a wizard saint within 100 years. How is he now? All the great wizard cried out in surprise. They could not be blamed for their ugly expressions. It was mainly because the Lanli tribe's overall strength was greater than most of the barbarian tribes. It was only second to the 4 wizard saints tribes. It would be strange if they were not shocked when they suddenly heard that the Lanli tribe had been destroyed too. The wizard said in a deep voice, "Not a single survivor of the Lanli tribe has survived." The hall immediately fell silent. Even a pin drop could be heard. Not a single survivor. In other words, everyone had been wiped out, including the great Wizard King who was extremely likely to become a wizard saint. A great battle was imminent. Suddenly hearing this news shook everyone's confidence. Even the Lanli tribe had been destroyed. Just how terrifying were the demon folk? Who in the world could stop them? As if he could see through everyone's thoughts, the wizard Dang said, "The 4 wizard saint master have all been mobilized. I believe their strength is enough to deal some damage to the demon folk. However, this is a war that concerns all of the barbarians. The wizard Saint Master may be powerful, but we can't place all the burden on them. We barbarians have to do our part too. This is also why the King City has urgently gathered all of our clansmen here. Only when they heard the wizard Dang say that the 4 great wizard saints had all been mobilized did everyone relax. The wizard saints were the most powerful existences in this world. With them taking action, the invasion of the demon folk would definitely be stopped. However, the wizard Dang was right. This was a war that concerned all of the barbarians. No one could stay out of it. The wizard saints were powerful, but there were only 4 of them. I believe you very much want to ask me what the demon folk are, where they come from, and why they want to destroy my barbarian tribe. The wizard Dang glanced past everyone and said sternly, I want to tell you that even I don't know much about these matters. However, you just need to remember that the demon folk are the irreconcilable enemies of us barbarians. As long as there's still a single breath left among us barbarians, the demon folk can't touch this land. The blood of the great wizard surged from what he said. They were all excited, ready to face death. It was as if they were tempted to fly onto the battlefield right now and dye the sky red with their blood, using their lives to stop the demonfolk's invasion. Yang Kai watched on coldly. He only felt like the barbarians really were simple-minded. The wizard Kai's words were not bewitching at all. It was just a simple explanation, but it was enough to resonate with the many great wizard. If he casually bewitched them a little more, the effect would probably be even better. Master, what should we do now? Yeah, Master. Are we going to set off for the battlefield right now? I already can't wait to witness the power of the demon folk. Ha 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 ha, I hope the demon folk don't piss their pants when they see me, the wizard. The group of great wizard yelled out. They did not take the demon folk who had already destroyed the 4 tribes seriously at all. The wizard Dang smiled. You'll all have the chance. When the time comes, I hope you'll remember what you said today. However, he changed the topic and said sternly, it's not the time yet. We have to wait for news from the Saint Master of the Wizard, and our southern barbarian tribe hasn't finished gathering yet. There are still many clansmen on the way. If we had more time, our southern barbarian tribe would definitely be able to do even better. It's a pity that time waits for no one. What you need to do right now is very simple. Gather all the clansmen of the southern barbarian tribe. Gather 2,000 to 3,000 clansmen each, and then, train them and make them listen to orders. The entire southern barbarian tribe had several 100,000 clansmen. If a great wizard wanted to gather 2,000 to 3,000 clansmen, it would be just enough to gather all the people in the tribe. However, these clansmen were usually scattered in various villages. If they gathered together rashly, it would definitely lead to all sorts of conflicts. Obviously, they would need some time to get used to each other. This was something that required the Great Wizard as the leader to deal with. Yang Kai nodded slightly when he heard that. A snake couldn't do without a head. 2,000 to 3,000 people was just the right number for a team. It was not too much, not too little. It was basically the limit that a great wizard could control. Currently, he had gathered around 1,000 people under him. According to the wizard Dang, he still needed to gather at least 1,000 more people. However, this was simple too. With the Wizard King's orders, the clansmen would definitely cooperate. Those villages that did not have a powerful wizard would definitely find a powerful backer to rely on. However, this required mutual consent. Currently, there were just too many great wizards gathered in the king's city. If he wanted those stragglers to rely on him, he would need to demonstrate some strength first. No one was willing to rely on an unreliable great wizard. Thinking of this, Yang Kai already had a plan in his mind. The wizard Dang did not speak much. This time, he gathered everyone here mainly to inform them of this mission. Therefore, after he finished speaking, he gave a few words of advice and let everyone leave. In an instant, more than 100 great wizards rushed out of the hall. Obviously, they were all anxious to recruit more people. Once the war started, the more people they had, the more protection they would have. Therefore, at this critical moment, no one was willing to fall behind others. They all wanted to use their means to keep others here so that they could carefully select the strongest warriors. Only young Kai, after waiting for all of them to leave, walked forward at a leisurely pace. "What's your name?" Suddenly, the wizard Pool's voice came from behind. Young Kai turned his head and replied, "Wizard Awesome." Then he said, "I was born like this, but I am indeed from the southern barbarian tribe. I was born in Tsungnan village." The wizard Dang nodded and said, "It doesn't matter how strong or weak your physique is. You are a great wizard. Next time, if someone questions your identity, just tell them my name." Young Kai was stunned. He did not know why the master looked like he was taking care of him, but he still nodded and said, "Thank you, master. Go." The wizard Dang waved his hand. Young Kai then walked out of the hall. After a moment, the guard captain who looked at Young Kai before came in and looked at the wizard Dang curiously. The wizard Dang said, "What do you want to ask?" The guard captain said, "Master, what's so special about that person?" He obviously heard the wizard Dang's words, so he did not understand why the wizard king master specifically asked him to stay behind to talk. The wizard Dang heard the guard captain's question and said, "Special, very special. He is a great wizard who is favored by the barbarian god." The guard captain frowned and said, "People who can become a wizard are all favored by the barbarian god." The wizard Dang smiled and said, "He is different. Before last winter, he was just an ordinary person. You could even say that he was worse than an ordinary person." "What?" The guard captain was shocked. "Master, are you sure? Before last winter, he was just an ordinary person. After one winter, he became a great wizard. How is this possible?" The wizard Dang said, "When I was a great wizard, I taught a person called the wizard Li for a while. And that wizard Li was the former village chief of Tsungnan village." Chapter 2840. The old village chief, the wizard Li, truly cared for young Kai in every possible way. He had personally witnessed young Kai's rise like a comet, shining with extremely dazzling light. He also knew that a small place like Tsungnan village was unable to accommodate a great wizard like young Kai with a limitless future. As a result, he had once written a letter last winter and got a hawk to take it to the king city, asking the king city to allow young Kai to study there. The letter back then was addressed to the wizard Dang. After all, the two of them had once been master and disciple. Although they had not contacted each other for quite some time, the old village chief felt that the wizard Dang should not turn him down with the aptitude and talent that young Kai displayed. If the invasion of the bone-eating tribe had not happened, then young Kai would have gone to the king city under the village chief's arrangements after winter. Unfortunately, the village chief had died along the way during the bone-eating tribe incident. He did not even manage to leave behind his last words. In reality, the wizard Dang was very interested in the person the village chief had mentioned in the letter, but the invasion of the demon folk had left him in a terrible state, so he had no time to care about anything else. Only when he saw young Kai in the hall this time did he vaguely feel that he was rather similar to the person the wizard Li had described in the letter did he specially ask about him. Sure enough, the seemingly weak wizard was the wizard Nyo from Tsungnan village. He was actually a great wizard. The wizard Li had mentioned in the letter that the wizard Nyo was only a low-grade wizard, yet he had actually become a great wizard after winter. So it really was a miracle from the god of barbarians. Just what kind of instructions did the god of barbarians hold for him to bestow such a miracle during this sensitive time of the demonfolk invasion? Suddenly, the wizard Dang thought of a saying he had heard in the past. However, in times of great calamity, there will definitely be a savior. In the king city, the flow of people was like a tide. Shoulder to shoulder, no worse than any city young Kai had seen before. Unlike the other great wizards, he did not rush back to gather his subordinates and gather his men. Instead, he wandered around the capital alone. Not long after, he walked directly into a shop and conspired with the shop owner in the back hall for a long time before he walked out leisurely. The shop owner who followed behind him had a joyful smile on his face. His attitude was extremely polite, as if he had received some great benefits. Without stopping, young Kai walked into another shop. After a while, when young Kai walked out again, the owner of this shop actually sent him off respectfully. After running around for half a day, there were dozens of shops in and out of young Kai. The situation was almost the same every time. Half a day later, Yang Kai silently calculated. Then, he nodded slightly and flew out of the city. Not long after, he flew back to where he was originally stationed. Butterfly stood there silently. When she sensed him coming over, she only raised her eyes to look at him. He lightly nodded. A few of his wizard apprentices came forward to greet him. They looked at Yang Kai anxiously. One of the older wizard apprentices said, "Master, where did you go? Why did you only come back now?" "I went to do something, what's wrong?" The old wizard apprentice said, "The other masters seem to be gathering people. I heard that the Wizard King Master gave an order for the great wizards to gather 2,000 to 3,000 subordinates. Master, you only came back now. Those strong warriors are almost all divided up by them." "Yes, the Wizard King Master did give such an order." Yang Kai nodded. When the wizard apprentices heard this, they immediately became anxious. The old wizard apprentice said, "Master, what are you waiting for? Since you are back, hurry up and prepare. I see that there are still a few villages with good warriors. They seem to be hesitating to join the great wizard. Master, you can go and invite them. Maybe you can persuade them to join." "Yes, Master. This matter should not be delayed. If we wait any longer, the rest will be crooked melons and cracked jujubes." The wizard apprentices persuaded one after another. On the way here, they merged with the Tsungnan village led by Yang Kai. Now, they did not want to join the other great wizard. Seeing that their master was not in a hurry, they were a little anxious for him. Anyone could see that only by having more and more powerful warriors under their command could they gain a certain advantage in the future war. Over 100 great sorcerers had been roaming all over the place during this half a day. They had been constantly swallowing and recruiting those barbarian warriors from various villages. Only Ji Hao's group hadn't moved at all. It seemed to be an anomaly. The tense atmosphere made them feel a sense of crisis for no reason. Don't worry, don't worry." Yang Kai waved his hand. His face was so calm that the wizard apprentices did not know what to say. For a moment, they were so anxious that their mouths were burning with anger. When they turned their heads to look at the other groups, the great wizards were using all kinds of methods to attract people. Some of them even directly used powerful wizard spells to attract people's attention. Looking at the strong warriors approaching the great wizard, they felt like they were watching a trace of life slip away from them. However, as the great wizard Yang Kai said that he was not in a hurry, it was useless for them to be anxious. After all, they were only a few wizard apprentices. In this kind of situation, they would not be of much use, especially when they were not familiar with Yang Kai. Sure enough, they were inexperienced. The wizard apprentices looked at each other and thought of the same thing. Time slowly passed in torment. The scattered barbarians gathered around the capital were gradually swallowed up by the groups led by great shamans one after another. The news of the demon folk invasion gradually spread through the crowd, and all of the barbarians began to band together for warmth. Some of them even took the initiative to seek refuge with the great shamans that seemed to be relatively stronger, even without being roped in. Yang Kai looked young and weak, so no one cared about him. And Yang Kai himself did not seem to have any intention of recruiting anyone. After returning from the king's city, he sat side by side with Butterfly and meditated. All the noise around him seemed to have nothing to do with him. This made the wizard apprentices under him feel more and more helpless. This continued until evening, when a thunderous voice suddenly rang out, "Where is the wizard master ox of Tsungnan village?" With that, the noisy plains suddenly fell silent. Everyone looked in that direction. They wondered why this guy was looking for the wizard ox of Tsungnan village. Tsungnan village. Many people had heard of it before. It was just a small village, so how powerful could a wizard from that place be? In a place where great wizard gathered, how could a wizard from a small village dare to call himself a master? However, when the people saw what the owner of the voice was carrying, their eyes could not help but light up. Even their breathing became ragged. This could not be helped. This person was actually carrying many wizard tools forged from steel. They shone brightly under the afterglow of the setting sun, dazzling everyone's eyes. This was a real weapon. Look at the sharp blade and the heavy hilt. If someone was really hit by such a weapon, he would be split in half. Then, they looked at the stone spears and stone axes in their hands. Countless barbarian warriors felt ashamed of their inferiority. Only the truly powerful warriors of the barbarian race were qualified to possess such weapons. This was because ordinary people couldn't get their hands on these weapons. They had to offer something of considerable value in exchange for these weapons. How could the barbarian warriors who came from various villages have anything of value? In the entire southern barbarian tribe, only the king's city could make such weapons. None of the villages had this ability. So, when a guy who was armed to the teeth suddenly appeared in a group of warriors carrying stone spears and stone axes, compared to those warriors from various villages, they were incomparably country bumpkins. This was not the end. Behind this person, there was a group of people who were armed to the teeth. Each of them carried a weapon on their back. With every step they took, even the ground trembled and groaned. Here, here. Yang Kai flew into the air and waved at them. Come here. The leading barbarian raised his eyes and looked. After seeing Yang Kai, he grinned, revealing his snow-white teeth. Then, he beckoned the people behind him to follow him and quickly approached where Yang Kai was. Hey! Why is it this guy? Not far away, a great wizard who was like an iron tower looked at Yang Kai with eyes full of surprise. So he was called Wizard Bool. The abnormal situation here obviously attracted a lot of people's attention. Many great wizards flew into the air and looked down, wanting to see what was going on in Tsungnan village. Wizard Master Bool, the things you want are here. Please accept them. The leading barbarian warrior said as he took off all the weapons on his back and threw them on the ground. The weapons were of different shapes and sizes, but they all had one thing in common. None of them weighed less than 100 pounds, and this person carried more than a dozen of them on his back. He walked like the wind, and when the weapons were thrown to the ground, a circle of dust was kicked up, and a dull sound was heard. Well, put them all here. Thank you for your hard work. Yang Kai nodded slightly. Boom, 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 one weapon after another was thrown on the ground. One barbarian warrior after another walked past. Soon, a mountain of weapons was piled up on the ground. Ahu and the others were dumbfounded. The surrounding barbarian warriors were also dumbfounded. The great sorcerers who had flown into the air to watch were similarly flabbergasted. The sound of swallowing of saliva was heard. Everyone looked at the mountain of weapons with eyes full of shock and desire. In the past, the barbarian warriors were very eager to get their hands on the weapons, but now they were piled up here. It was like a dream. Among those present, even those great wizards had never seen so many weapons gathered in one place. Any one of these weapons was worth a lot of money. And it was far from over. More people walked over and threw down the weapons they brought. Why? Why did the owners of the shops in King City take out their weapons and throw them here? What was the relationship between them and this Wizard Bool? What was going on? Could it be that they gave these weapons to the Wizard Bool? That was not possible. But what about the scene in front of them? Many great wizards knew the owners of those shops, and some of them had dealt with them before. Naturally, they would not be wrong. Chapter 2841. Many of the great wizards could no longer stay calm as they thought of this. Why? Everyone was a great wizard. Why did they only give the Wizard Bool to him and not to them? They were also great wizards. Furthermore, none of the great wizards present would be weaker than that Wizard Bool. Hey, what is the meaning of this? Why did you give all the things to him? Why don't you give some to me too? A great wizard shouted in midair. That's right. The war is imminent. These things should be divided equally. We can't let him have all of it. Someone immediately agreed. This statement was accepted by even more great adepts. For a moment, everyone was shouting non-stop, and the scene was chaotic. What are you shouting about? The barbarian warrior who was leading the group shouted angrily. He did not have any intention to give these great wizards any face. He raised his head coldly and snorted. Who said that we are giving these weapons to the Wizard Master Bool? These are all things that he exchanged for. Exchanged? Impossible. So many weapons. What did he exchange for them with? No one had such a huge amount of wealth. There were at least 1,000 weapons piled up at the scene. Moreover, there were still more weapons being sent over. Even the Wizard King would not have so much wealth to exchange for so many weapons, right? The barbarian leader shook his head and said, I don't know what the Wizard Master Ball used to exchange with others. However, he gave me this. As he spoke, he took out a rolling object. The barbarian warriors looked at it but still did not understand what it was. However, the great wizards all changed their expressions and said, the inner core of a beast. Moreover, it was an extremely high-quality inner core of a beast. This kind of inner core was even beneficial to the training of the Wizard King, let alone a great wizard. If it was an inner core of a beast like this, it could be exchanged for many weapons. However, no great wizard would use this kind of treasure to exchange for weapons that they could not use. In order to exchange for so many weapons, how many inner cores did this wizard have? Just the thought of it was terrifying. The Wizard Master Ball also used this to exchange with me. Another shop owner agreed. At the same time, he took out another inner core and shook it. It almost blinded the eyes of the great wizards. If it was said that the variety of weapons had an incomparably huge attraction to every barbarian warrior, then the barbarian warriors would definitely be attracted to them. Then these inner cores were the same for the great wizard. For a moment, the way many people looked at young Kai changed. There was only one question in their minds: where did he get so many monster cores from? No Grand Magus had the ability to kill so many savage beasts, not even a Magus King. Time passed by slowly. After learning the truth of the trade, the noisy great adepts were too embarrassed to make any more noise. They could only watch as the weapons were tossed aside one by one. Their faces were full of envy. There were even some who were silently contemplating whether they should form a good relationship with Wu Niu. Not to mention other things, if they could obtain a demonic beast's inner core from him, it would be enough to benefit them greatly. After a long time, the last barbarian who brought the weapons walked past. The weapons piled up on the ground had reached thousands. Rapid breaths showed just how restless the hearts of many berserkers were. The villagers from Tsungnan village were so excited that they swallowed their saliva. They had already guessed what these weapons were used for. After all, they were not idiots. The devil people were invading. With the war imminent, Yang Kai suddenly bringing out so many weapons was clearly meant for them to use, but such a miraculous method made them somewhat unable to believe it. Who went to Yang Kai and pulled him down. He whispered, Nyo, are these things for us? Yang Kai smiled and patted his shoulder. Of course they are for you. Then he waved his hand and said, choose for yourselves. One for each of you. As soon as he said that, thousands of people became serious. The few wizard apprentices who were secretly complaining about Yang Kai's inaction were speechless. They were full of respect. The great wizard gathered outside King's City. There were hundreds of them. But who had the ability to gather so many weapons at once? Who had the courage to do so? If you want to do something, you must first sharpen your tools. With so many sharp weapons, even if there were only 1,000 people, the advantage they had was not something a team of 2,000 or 3,000 people could compete with. And the weapons piled up here were more than 1,000. The few wizard apprentices could almost predict what would happen next. The complaints and dissatisfaction they had with Yang Kai had already disappeared. They only felt that this wizard bull was very experienced. Although he looked young, he was very experienced. He did not make a move, but once he made a move, he hit the vital points. It was hard not to admire him. The few wizard apprentices who came from different villages looked at each other and smiled. The sound of people swallowing their saliva came one after another. The 1,000 people who were under the command of Yang Kai gathered around the mountain of weapons. But no one was in a hurry to fight for anything. They all looked at the piled-up weapons in a daze. Everyone's eyes were full of soft light. It was as if they were not looking at cold weapons, but at naked beauties. You guys go first. Tiger suddenly turned his head and looked at the villagers from other villages. As a warrior who came from the same village as Yang Kai, Tiger felt that this was the time to win glory for Yang Kai and establish prestige. Naturally, he was not in a hurry to fight for it. Instead, he gave priority to the villagers from other villages. Hearing what Tiger said, The leaders of other villages looked at each other. One of them smiled and shook his head. These weapons were brought by the wizard Master Bull. Seongnan village should have the priority to choose. You guys go first. Yes, Tiger, you guys go first. Yes, Tiger, don't decline. Tiger shook his head and said, it is because Bull brought these things that you guys should choose first. These things were not brought for Seongnan village, but for everyone. The leaders of the few villages immediately quarreled. They did not want to give in to each other. They did not want to be the first to make a move. The barbarians who were watching cursed in their hearts. They were envious and helpless. The oldest wizard apprentice suddenly smiled and said, don't quarrel. Now that we are gathered in one place, there is no difference between villages. Now, we are a whole. We belong to the Wizards' Bull division. It doesn't matter who goes first. What's more, there are so many weapons here. Even if each of you take one, you won't be able to divide them all. There is no need to decline. The Wizards' Bull division. Everyone's eyes lit up. They all started to ponder. The old wizard apprentice was right. Now that everyone had gathered in one place, there was no need to differentiate between villages. Only when they became a whole, they would be united in the future war. Everyone's will was like an impregnable fortress. Deliberately dividing the villages would only cause selfishness between each other. Any selfishness might cause people to lose their lives in the future war. Tiger thought for a while and nodded. What the old master said is right. Since that is the case, let's choose together. The rest of the people naturally did not have any objections. Everyone immediately swarmed up and began to divide the weapons. They took out the weapons that were suitable for them and let the others choose. For a moment, there was a hubbub of voices. Everyone was laughing. Although it was lively, it was not chaotic. Everyone advanced and retreated in an orderly manner. This scene made the other great wizard look at it with different expressions. Needless to say, they were envious and jealous. This wizard was able to gather more than 1,000 people just by gifting them weapons. His method was admirable. Looking at their own barbarian warriors who were envious of him, they all sighed. They couldn't help it. Although this method was obvious at a glance, it could not be replicated. They did not have the huge financial resources of this wizard. Although they admired him, they also felt a sense of crisis. Previously, the Wizard King Master's order was very clear. He wanted the Great Wizard to each recruit 2,000 to 3,000 people. Half a day had passed, and many people had completed the task. However, there were still many people who were still working hard. There were also a lot of stragglers who were still observing. Originally, everyone had used their own methods to compete fairly, but now that Voodoo Bull had suddenly made such a move, he had the advantage and left the other grand wizards far behind. They believed that after the 1,000 people had divided the weapons, there would be more people who would be willing to join them. If the powerful warriors were all recruited by the wizard, then what would they do? Thinking of this, a few great wizards who had a good relationship with each other gathered together and began to discuss countermeasures. After a stick of incense worth of time, the 1,000 or so barbarian warriors under Yang Kai's command all received their own weapons. Each of the warriors was holding a large axe, a broadsword, and a spear forged from fine steel. They looked majestic and had a completely new temperament. As for the archers, they were also given more powerful bows and arrows. The mountain of weapons had only shrunk by a third. There were still more weapons waiting for the owner to choose. A group of barbarian warriors gathered around and looked at the weapons. They all licked their lips and looked like they were hungry. When they turned to look at Yang Kai, their eyes were full of desire. Yang Kai smiled and snapped his fingers. Wizard Bull Tribe. Accept. Wizard Bull Master, I am willing to join. I'll join. I want to join too. Wizard Bull Master, please accept me. I am the strongest warrior in our village. As soon as Yang Kai's voice fell, it was covered by the voices of countless people. The situation was almost out of control. Fortunately, Tiger and the others took out their shining weapons in time and blocked the people who were crowding over. Yang Kai raised his hand and said, "Don't rush, and don't push. The Wizard King Master ordered us to recruit 2,000 to 3,000 people. My Wizard Bull's target is 3,000 people." So, many people will have a chance. Those who are interested in joining my Wizard Bull tribe, please line up and come forward to receive your weapon. After that, you will be a member of my Wizard Bull tribe. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd immediately quieted down. The next moment, the barbarians rushed forward and formed a long line. Chapter 2842. 3,000 people? Wizard is awesome. You're just a low-level great wizard. How can you control so many people? Be careful. At the same time, a burly figure suddenly fell from the sky and landed on the side of the weapon mountain. The huge impact made the ground tremble. Dust flew up, and the entire weapon mountain made a clanking sound. Yang Kai looked at the lush black hair on the man's chest and raised his eyebrows. Wizard 2? What do you want? Wizard 2 laughed and said, I'm just worried about you because you're young and weak. Thank you for your kindness, but don't worry. Wizard 2 shook his head and said, you can't say that. We're all great wizards of the Southern Barbarian tribe. We should help each other. How about this? This shaman is a little stronger than you, so I'll work a little harder. You take in another 1,000 people, and this shaman will help you digest the remaining 1,000 people. As thanks, you can give me the extra weapons. As he said that, he reached out his hand and grabbed the weapon mountain, not giving Yang Kai any chance to react. Stop. Ahu was furious when he saw this. Unyo had paid a huge price to get these weapons from King City. Although he did not know where Unyo got so many internal elixirs that could be used for trading, now that someone dared to reach out their claws, he naturally could not sit back and do nothing. What bullshit, great wizard. If you dare to steal my things, then you're my enemy. While shouting, Tiger had already chopped at Wizard 2 with his axe. Fuck off. Wu 2 didn't even turn his head. He only let out a roar, and a shockwave visible to the naked eye suddenly spread out from under his feet. The shockwave clearly contained a huge impact, because when Ahu was touched by the shockwave, he instantly flew high into the air like a kite and fell to the ground. At the same time, Wizard 2 had already reached out and grabbed a fine steel spear. With a slight force, the entire weapon mountain shook, and almost half of the weapons flew up into the air. Looking at the direction, it was obvious that they were flying towards the barbarian warriors led by Wizard 2. Seeing this, everyone in Wizard 2's department was overjoyed and excitedly prepared to welcome the arrival of many weapons. But at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared on the weapon mountain out of thin air. He didn't do anything, but the thousands of weapons flying in the air seemed to be pressed down by a mountain. They all fell back and collided with each other, making clanking sounds. High up in the air, Yang Kai looked down at Wizard 2 and mocked, "Are you robbing me?" Wizard 2's face turned red and defended himself. "How is that robbing? I've said that we're all from the Southern Barbarian tribe." Wizard. Wu 2 shook his head and said, "It doesn't matter whether you agree or not. I've always been willing to help others. Hurry up and get lost. Don't be unappreciative," Yang Kai said in shock. "Wizard, can you be a little more shameless? Don't you feel embarrassed for lying through your teeth?" As expected, the wizard's face turned red, but his tone was still firm. Fine. Since you don't know what's good for you, I, as an upper-level great wizard, have the responsibility and obligation to teach you the truth." As he spoke, he chanted an incantation and raised his hand. Wizard power surged, and 2 visible chains of wizard power wrapped around Yang Kai. Caught off guard, Yang Kai was trapped tightly. He couldn't help but laugh out loud as he lectured, "Remember, if you can't see the reality now, you'll only lose face. If you can't see the reality on the battlefield, you'll lose your life. So there's no need to thank me. This is what a wizard should do." As he spoke, he suddenly exerted force in his hand. Looking at his posture, it seemed that he wanted to drag Yang Kai down from the air. But in the next moment, his expression changed. This was because under his actions, the wizard bull standing on the weapon mountain didn't move at all. He looked at him with a smile on his face, as if he was nailed there by some force. He was slightly shocked and instinctively felt that it was impossible. His opponent was just a low-level great wizard, 2 levels lower than him. Since he was bound, how could he resist his power? He didn't believe it and tried again, but he was shocked to find that there was still no effect. He didn't seem to be binding a low-level great wizard, but a real mountain. After 2 futile attempts, he was a little embarrassed. Many of the clansmen were at a loss. They didn't know what the wizard too was doing. A few great wizard even glanced at the wizard too, hinting him to quickly end this farce. Previously, when they gathered together to discuss, they felt that the best way to solve the current situation was to make the wizard bull lose face. It was a fact that he brought thousands of weapons, which attracted the attention of many powerful barbarian warriors. It also attracted their interest to join him. However, this interest was only built on the basis of weapons. If the clansmen saw that this Wu Nyo couldn't even withstand a single blow, presumably, those clansmen who wanted to join him would make other plans. Weapons were tempting, but a weak great wizard was not worth entrusting their lives to. The barbarians were about to face a bloody battle of life and death. A powerful great wizard leader was much safer than those weapons. That was why the wizard too jumped out to find trouble and deliberately fought with Yang Kai. According to their previous plan, as long as they could crush this wizard bull in front of everyone and make him lose face, then his advantage would be gone. But the current situation was a little different from what they had discussed before. The wizard bull was already captured. What was the wizard too doing? In a flash, another great wizard flew down and cast a chain-like wizard spell to tie up Yang Kai. He shouted, "Wizard bull, wizard too is a kind person. I don't want to embarrass you like this. This wizard is not that easy to talk to. Get the hell down here." With a bit of strength in his hands, he was actually pushed over and almost fell to the ground. This great wizard's eyes almost popped out. Only now did he realize that the wizard too was not being merciful, but he was really powerless. What's going on? While he was stunned, he saw Yang Kai grab the 2 wizards' chains and grinned. The scenery above is beautiful. This wizard doesn't want to go down. It's better for you two to get the hell up here. The big hand that grabbed the chains suddenly pulled back. Accompanied by 2 exclamations and countless pairs of shocked eyes, the wizard too and the other great wizard flew directly from the ground and uncontrollably threw themselves at Yang Kai. While in mid-air, the 2 of them danced and struggled to stabilize their bodies. But then their hearts sank. Because they saw the wizard bull was actually grinning and rubbing his hands together. He looked like he was up to no good. Forcing themselves to take a breath, the 2 of them simultaneously urged the wizard's power to condense a wizard's shield on the surface of their bodies. As soon as the light of the wizard's shield lit up, Yang Kai had already swung his fist. Left hook, right hook, 2 punches like the wind. Crack. At the same time, the 2 great wizards' shield on the surface of the wizard's body shattered. Facing Yang Kai's punches that didn't seem to have much strength, they didn't have the slightest strength to resist. The 2 grand magi let out a muffled groan as they were sent flying like ragged sacks. They landed heavily on the ground, their faces covered in blood. The whole world was silent for a moment. Everyone looked at Yang Kai in shock, as if they had seen a ghost. Especially those great wizards, the corners of their mouths twitched and their faces twitched. They couldn't believe what they just saw was real. The barbarian warriors didn't practice wizard's power, so they didn't know the huge difference between a great wizard and a great wizard. But the wizards on the scene knew. Under normal circumstances, a great wizard of the upper rank could easily crush a great wizard of the lower rank. The difference of 2 ranks was not just for show. But the scene in front of them was so real that they couldn't find a suitable reason to explain it. The wizard's shield cast by the 2 great wizard was easily broken by this wizard. If the wizard's shield was so weak, then what was the point of learning it so hard? In fact, it wasn't that the wizard's shield was weak, it was that this wizard was too strong. All the great wizard's scalp went numb. Previously, when they saw that he had brought a few thousand weapons and suddenly gained a huge advantage in terms of recruiting people, they were a little dissatisfied. Some even wanted to find trouble with him like the wizard Tome and wait for an opportunity to snatch some weapons from him. But now, who would dare to have such thoughts? Even the 2 great adepts had lost so much face. Who could possibly be his match? On the other side, the 2 great wizards who were sent flying were also a little confused. The wizard Tome struggled to stand up from the ground, shook his head, and finally came back to his senses. He looked at the eyes of the people around him blankly, and his face turned green and red. He suddenly became angry and said, "You dare to sneak attack me?" He didn't want to admit that he wasn't Yang Kai's opponent. He only felt that the loss just now was because he didn't notice it, because he didn't think that Yang Kai would really attack him. If he was fully prepared, he wouldn't have made such a fool of himself. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. This time, he came out to teach Yang Kai a lesson to suppress Yang Kai's advantage, and at the same time, to increase his prestige. Who would have thought that he would go for wool and come home shorn? Not only did his plan not go smoothly, but his face was also covered in dirt. He couldn't just let this go. If he just admitted defeat like this, his prestige would definitely plummet, and he wouldn't be able to gather any more people. "Surround them for me," the wizard Tome shouted. At the same time, there was a burst of noise, and nearly 2,000 barbarians rushed out and spread out, surrounding Yang Kai and his 1,000 people. When the other great wizard saw this, he also silently waved his hand, and the 1,500 people under him also gathered. In an instant, 3,000 to 4,000 barbarians heard the command and moved. Tiger and the others' bodies tensed up, and they all held the weapons in their hands tightly. When the other barbarians saw this, they immediately understood that this matter was not going to be easily settled. They quickly retreated to the side, making space for the two sides of the battle. Chapter 28:43. You want to fight? Yang Kai raised his eyebrows and grinned, "Sure." As soon as he finished speaking, he quickly chanted an incantation and waved his hand. A halo of light suddenly spread out and enveloped the 1,000 people on his side. The 1,000 people's bodies suddenly emitted a dark red light, as if they were covered in a layer of blood mist. Not only that, but Tiger and the others' bodies also emitted crackling sounds. Their originally tall bodies suddenly grew 3 times taller, and the animal skin clothes they wore tightened. Every pair of beautiful eyes became as red as blood, and there was no fear in them. It was as if even if a wizard saint stood in front of them, they would still be able to swing their weapons and hack at him. The 1,000 people's killing intent gathered in one place, as if it wanted to break through the clouds. Boundless energy gushed out from their bodies as thousands of people gripped their weapons tightly. It was as if they had been reborn. All of them had excited expressions on their faces as they stared blankly. They couldn't believe that they had such powerful strength. Bloodthirst. And it was an extremely high-grade bloodthirst. This was because although the eyes of these 1,000 people were as red as blood, and they didn't seem to be afraid, they didn't lose their rationality. This was an effect that only the most profound bloodthirst technique could produce. An ordinary bloodthirst technique could certainly make the barbarian warriors more powerful and reduce their senses. However, it would also affect the warriors' rationality to a certain extent. In serious cases, it could even cause them to go crazy and damage their primordial spirit. After the effects of the bloodthirst technique disappeared, there might even be some repercussions. However, this wizard's bloodthirst was different. It was something that only a great wizard on the level of a wizard king could use. Many of the great wizards were shocked. Just this bloodthirst was enough to make them view this wizard in a new light. This wasn't something that just anyone could use. In particular, the bloodthirst he used could easily envelop 1,000 people, not one more, not one less. What kind of precise control did this require? And it seemed that he was far from reaching his limit. Was this really going to start a war? The bloodthirst had already been used. The arrow on the bow had to be released. However, this wasn't the end. After using the bloodlust technique, Yang Kai didn't stop chanting. His hands moved up and down as he moved. Rays of light of different colors burst out one after another, enveloping the 1,000 people. Lightness, stone armor, mega strength, layer after layer of light. The light enveloped every wizard and every warrior of the Bull tribe. The surface of their bodies emitted a dark red light mixed with yellow light, as if they were wearing a layer of heavy armor, impenetrable by swords and spears. A light breeze wrapped around their legs. It made their speed faster and fiercer. The golden light that symbolized the potency skill increased their strength by 30 to 50%. The breathing of the 1,000 people became heavy, and their fighting spirit was fully unleashed. The 3,000 to 4,000 people surrounding them were so shocked by this power that they couldn't help but take a few steps back, their faces full of fear. There was no need for them to fight. Just by looking at their posture, they knew that each of the Wizard's Bull clan members had the ability to fight one against two or more people. The Wizard 2 and the other great wizards' faces were extremely ugly. They thought that they would use their own people to intimidate them. That Wizard Bull was definitely going to lose his mind. Who knew that this guy would be so fierce? Not only was he not afraid, but he also directly buffed his own people with many wizard spells. At this moment, the two great wizards were just like the other great wizards. They were immersed in the deep shock. Casting so many large-scale wizard spells consecutively by himself, even a wizard king wouldn't be able to withstand it. The Wizard Bull was just a low-rank great wizard. How could he have so much wizard energy to squander? Only now did they realize that they had underestimated this Wizard Bull. Just the amount of wizard energy stored in his body was far more than an ordinary great wizard. Currently, he was just a low-rank great wizard. What would happen if he was promoted to a high-rank great wizard? Just when the two were still in shock, Yonkai's mouth started chanting again. Another ray of light enveloped them. At the same time that the beam of light descended, the expressions of over 1,000 people simultaneously changed. The dark red light that spread out from their bodies seemed to come alive and fused together. In the blink of an eye, the thousands of people seemed to have merged into one. There was no longer any distinction between them. The monstrous aura that gathered together made the heaven and earth tremble. Life chain. The Wizard 2's face changed. He couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He looked at Yonkai as if he was looking at a monster. Life chain. That was a truly profound wizard spell. Only Great Wizard had the qualifications to learn this wizard spell. This wizard spell could connect the life force of different numbers of barbarian soldiers together. Under the effect of the life chain, the damage that was inflicted on anyone would be evenly distributed. This allowed the barbarian soldiers to withstand more damage than they could withstand. This was the wizard spell that the entire barbarian race relied on the most in large-scale battles. However, although Great Wizard could learn how to learn the life chain, they would often need the help of other wizards if they wanted to use it. If there were only a few people, then it would be fine. A high-rank Great Wizard's life chain could connect the life force of 200 people together. However, if there was help from other wizards, and disciples in the team, the number of people could increase by several times. The more wizards there were, the better the effect would be. When this Wizard 2 used the life chain just now, there was no one to help him. However, the light of his wizard spell instantly enveloped the thousands of people, connecting the life force of the thousands of people together and fusing the thousands of scattered individuals into one. If they didn't see this with their own eyes, no great wizard would believe it. Only Magus Kings, and high-grade Magus Kings at that, could create life chains that could connect the lives of 1,000 people. Facing such a terrifying group, the advantage of having several times the number of people was instantly gone. The Wizard 2 and the other Great Wizard could also use the life chain to connect the life force of their own soldiers, but that would require some preparation time. After all, they still needed the help of their wizard subordinates. How could they be like Yonkai, who could use the life chain so casually? In other words, if they really fought now, the 1,000 people under Yonkai's command could easily crush 10,000 barbarian soldiers without much damage. This wizard is ready. When do we fight? Yonkai looked down at the Wizard 2 and asked with a straight face. This calm look made the other great wizard's eyelids twitch. So many large-scale wizard spells were cast, but he didn't look tired at all. Was he really a monster? Just casually casting 2 or 3 wizard spells like that was enough to exhaust any great wizard. Facing such an enemy, what was the point of fighting? But was it really worth it? If it was other wizard spells, it wouldn't affect the soldiers much. But Bloodlust spell was different. Once it was activated, it would consume the blood essence of the barbarian soldiers. After the effect was over, they would be weak for many days. This wizard didn't say anything and just cast Bloodlust spell on his soldiers. Was he crazy? Didn't he know what the consequences of doing this would be? Facing Yonkai's aggression, the Wizard 2's face turned red. He couldn't say a word. What could he say? Fight now? He didn't really want to fight with young Kai. He just wanted to use his people as a deterrent. Who knew that this guy would be so unruly? Now that he was in a difficult situation, the wizard's intestines turned green with regret. Oh! Young Kai looked at the wizard too mockingly and laughed, looking at the wizard master too. It seems like you aren't ready. Do you want me to give you a few days to prepare? The wizard too's face turned red. He straightened his neck and said, Wizard too, don't be too arrogant. This wizard just thought that this is outside the king's city. If you and I really fight, it will definitely alarm the wizard king master. If the wizard king master is angry, no one will have a good ending. It's not that I am afraid of you. When these words were heard by everyone, the great wizard had different expressions. Now that the situation was like this, anyone could see that the wizard too had no chance of winning. He could only use his mouth to save some face. However, after this incident, Wu Tu's reputation had been completely lost. There was no point in saying anything more. It was impossible for him to recruit more clansmen. On the other hand, this wizard was awesome. He had the battle record of sending 2 great wizards flying, and now he showed his strong great wizard skills. It would only make the stragglers more interested in him. Fortunately, the Shaman King's order was for every Grand Shaman to gather 2,000 to 3,000 clansmen. If he was allowed to do as he wished, he might be able to gather tens of thousands of people. If that was the case, many Grand Shamans would not be able to complete their mission. Wizard Master 2, do you mean you don't want to fight? Yang Kai chuckled and said with disappointment, I prepared for so long. The wizard 2 snorted, we are all from the southern barbarian tribe. What's the point of having a civil war? If you want to fight, go fight with the devil people. When the time comes, let's see who can kill more devil people. Yang Kai touched his chin and thought for a while. He nodded and said, Wizard Master 2 is right. The wizard 2's expression relaxed, you also think it's right? Yang Kai smiled, if that's the case, then let's fight on the battlefield. Okay. It's a deal. This wizard will not lose to you. After the wizard 2 said that, he waved his hand. The 2,000 people under him immediately let out a sigh of relief and scattered like birds and beasts. The wizard 2 turned around and was blown by the wind. Only then did he realize that his back was soaked with sweat. He could not help but shiver. He secretly cursed himself for not having eyes. He actually kicked an iron plate. On the other side, Yang Kai's hand seals changed continuously. He undid the chains of life and bloodlust. To the surprise of Ahu and the others, after the bloodlust was undone, they did not feel dizzy like before. Although they were more or less tired, it was reasonable. And this kind of after effect was nothing to the strong barbarian warriors. They could recover by eating something casually. Chapter 2844. Not only did the wizard's provocation not have the desired effect, but it also increased Yang Kai's prestige. Now, everyone knew that although this great sorcerer called Wu Niu looked thin and weak, his personal strength was unfathomable. If one could follow such a great sorcerer, it would definitely be more secure and have a better future than following others. What's more, if they joined him, they could even get weapons. Who wouldn't be tempted by such conditions? Therefore, after the wizard left, Yang Kai's recruitment work went smoothly. In less than half an hour, another 2,000 people joined the team, and the remaining weapons were divided up. It wasn't that Yang Kai didn't accept anyone, but rather he recruited people on a per-village basis. Each village had 200 to 300 people, so the number of 2,000 people he could recruit was only 8 or 9 villages. Among these people, 90% were barbarian warriors and archers. Only a few were wizard of varying strength. Butterfly coordinated the situation of the newly recruited 2,000 people and reported it to Yang Kai. Yang Kai immediately had a few more wizards under his command. In addition to those who had followed Yang Kai to the king's city, he now had 13 wizards under his command. 4 of them were wizards and 9 were wizard apprentices. There wasn't a single wizard under his command. This couldn't be helped. The number of wizards was low, and it was difficult to cultivate a wizard in a village. Only a few small tribes with thousands of people and the king's city had wizards. However, This wasn't a big problem because Yang Kai still had Butterfly. Other great wizards had wizards under their command, but Yang Kai had a great wizard under his command. Butterfly wasn't an ordinary great wizard. She had been taught by Qing Yan for many years. The wizard skills she mastered were definitely more abundant than other great wizards. Once the war started, if the two of them worked together, it would be more than enough to cover 3,000 wizards. Next, Yang Kai personally split the 3,000 people into 10 small teams. Each team consisted of 250 to 300 people, with the strongest warriors and archers taking up the position of captain and vice-captain. 100 elites were selected from the 3,000 men to form a guard team. It wasn't that Yang Kai needed a group of guards. With his current strength, why would he need the protection of these barbarians? The main task of this special group of guards was to protect the 13 wizards other than himself and Butterfly. These wizards were just wizards and wizard apprentices. They wouldn't be of much use in a one-on-one fight, but in a small-scale war, they would be of great help. It was indeed the hub that connected the 10 teams, and the death of any one of them would be a huge loss. Therefore, Yang Kai had to plan for their safety. After the allocation of the teams was made clear, the team of 3,000 was immediately clear. Each team was managed by their own captain and vice-captain, and these captains and vice-captains were directly under Yang Kai's command, which was much more effective than him giving orders to the 3,000 people. The great sorcerers in the surroundings saw this and realized the benefits of it. They also learned from others. Very soon, the various great adept clans were in an orderly fashion. After this display of strength, the 3,000 people became even more submissive towards Yang Kai, feeling that they had truly chosen the right person this time. In the future, perhaps they would have an advantage over their fellow clansmen in future battles. After ordering the 3,000 people to practice and familiarize themselves with the formation, Yang Kai and Butterfly quietly left King's City. "Where are we going now?" Butterfly didn't know why Yang Kai pulled her out, so she asked curiously. Yang Kai flew in front to lead the way, and said without looking back, "When I was in King's City, I saw some tamed monster beast, let's go catch some." "You want to tame a beast?" Butterfly looked at him in surprise. "Senior Qing taught you the art of taming a beast, right?" Yang Kai looked back at her. Butterfly nodded lightly. "Yes, he did. But I haven't used it before, so I don't know if it's effective. It's fine as long as he did. As for whether it's effective or not, we'll know when we try it. I haven't used it before." Yang Kai smiled slightly. "But, do you know where there are savage beasts? Just follow me. Those beasts in King's City couldn't have appeared out of thin air. If they can catch them, we can too." Yang Kai continued to move forward as he spoke. He had already inquired about the location before. There was a mountain range about half a day's journey away from King's City, and Yang Kai's target was in that mountain range. The two set off at night, and only at dawn did a continuous mountain range appear in front of them, as if a giant dragon was lying on the ground. After entering the mountain range, they kept moving forward without stopping. After half a day, a fierce cry suddenly came from above. Yang Kai's figure paused and looked up. Through the scattered leaves, he saw a huge eagle-shaped monster beast swooping down from the sky and rushing into a kernel. When the monster beast flew up again, its sharp claws had already caught a giant python. The python was struggling non-stop, even coiling its body around the eagle's claws. The eagle lowered its head and pecked the python's body. Blood suddenly spilled out from the air, and the python struggled even more fiercely, causing the eagle's body to sway unstably, as if it could fall from the sky at any time. But soon, the giant eagle opened its mouth and spat out a winged blade-like attack, cutting the body of the giant python into several pieces. The internal organs of the giant python were blurred, and the struggling body gradually stopped moving. The fierce cry sounded again, and the eagle turned in the air, grabbed its prey, and flew in a direction. Seeing Yang Kai looking at it with great interest and a look of interest, Butterfly immediately understood his intention and asked, "You want to catch this kind?" "Of course I want to catch this kind," Yang Kai said as he called Butterfly to follow in the direction of the eagle. Butterfly was speechless. Although she knew that Yang Kai wanted to catch savage beasts, she didn't know that his goal was actually flying savage beasts. These things are much harder to catch than ordinary savage beasts, and judging from the eagle's size and aura, its rank is not low. Relying on her beast taming skill may not be effective. Although she was nervous, she didn't say anything and just followed Yang Kai all the way. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the two of them arrived at the bottom of a valley. This valley was surrounded by steep cliffs and steep cliffs. The cliffs were filled with rugged rocks, and between the rocks of the cliffs, there were countless huge bird nests. Almost every nest had a giant eagle proudly standing there, as if they were monarchs overlooking their territory. Even more giant eagles were soaring in the air, either out looking for food or returning from their hunt. So many. Butterfly looked at the scene in front of her in surprise. It's good to have more. Yang Kai grinned. According to his idea, the more the better, but the prerequisite is that the beast taming skill is useful. If it's useless, then everything is just empty talk. Wait a moment, I'll try. Saying so, Yang Kai's figure flickered and he suddenly disappeared. Butterfly looked around with wide eyes, but couldn't find any trace of Yang Kai. Her pretty face couldn't help but be shocked. This is definitely not the effect of any wizard skill that she knows of. The more she interacts with this wizard, the more Butterfly finds him to be unfathomable. Just as she was looking around for Yang Kai, she suddenly felt something strange on the opposite cliff. When she looked up, she saw Yang Kai. She didn't know when he ran over there, but he was holding a giant eagle by the neck and pressing it into the nest, so that it wouldn't be discovered by the other giant eagles. A weak light flashed and disappeared into the giant eagle's body. Butterfly clearly saw that the struggling giant eagle had stopped moving. After a while, the giant eagle stood up again and stretched its wings. It became extremely arrogant again, as if nothing had happened. Success. Butterfly's eyes lit up. Taming beast is a very overbearing wizard skill. Not only does it consume a lot of wizard power, but it is also a wizard skill that can only be mastered by a great wizard, and the conditions to use it are also very harsh. If it succeeds, it will leave a brand in the body of the savage beast, controlling its life and death. But if it fails, not only will the great wizard who uses taming beast suffer a certain degree of backlash, but the target will also die in an instant. So under normal circumstances, if you want to use taming beast on a savage beast, it is best to first capture it and spend some time to cultivate feelings, so that it will lower its guard. Only then will there be some hope of success. Like Yang Kai who forced himself on a savage beast, failure is the only outcome. But in fact, he actually succeeded. Even though she has seen many miracles brought by this wizard skill, Butterfly was still a little stunned. Is it just luck? She thought. The next moment, the giant eagle that was subdued by Yang Kai suddenly spread its wings and flew directly towards him. A moment later, when the giant eagle landed in front of him, Yang Kai, who was hiding on the back of the giant eagle, poked his head out. I have a very good idea. I need you to cooperate. Butterfly asked in a daze. What idea? Yang Kai's eyes flashed. I want to capture the Eagle King. Butterfly couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth. But after Yang Kai explained the situation, she felt that this is indeed a good idea. After using Taming Beast to subdue a giant eagle, Yang Kai vaguely sensed the thoughts of the giant eagle. And from its thoughts, Yang Kai understood that there is an Eagle King in this place. That Eagle King is stronger than all the other giant eagles, and all the other giant eagles have to bow down to it. If they can really directly attack the root of the problem and subdue the Eagle King, then there are so many giant eagles here that they can take for themselves. This is a way to take the firewood from under the cauldron. It is much more effective than Yang Kai's plan of subduing the eagles one by one. The two of them discussed for a moment and quickly finalized the plan. Then, the giant eagle flew up again, while Yang Kai and Butterfly hid on the back of the giant eagle. This monster beast's back is very wide, enough for two people to sit side by side without feeling crowded. Under the cover of the long feathers, Yang Kai and Butterfly's figures are not exposed at all. Chapter 28:45. Inside a giant eagle's nest, the Eagle King was locked in place by Yang Kai's wizard spell. Rays of Taming Beast light blossomed from Yang Kai's hands and enveloped the Eagle King, but to no avail. The Eagle King continued to cry out, its scarlet eyes filled with an untamed look. Around the eagle nest, hundreds of giant eagles launched attacks without fear of death. They kept rushing over in an attempt to rescue their king. Butterfly stood in the air, urging her wizard power. A wizard shield enveloped the entire nest, blocking all the giant eagles outside. Even the wind blades they spat out could only create ripples on the wizard shield. Previously, Yang Kai and Butterfly had directly attacked the Eagle King's nest. Yang Kai had just subdued the Eagle King, but before he could use Taming Beast on it, the Eagle King let out a fierce cry, and after this cry, the giant eagles all rushed over as if they had received an order. If it weren't for Butterfly blocking them, Yang Kai wouldn't have had time to deal with the Eagle King. These giant eagles' levels weren't low, but they weren't too high either. With Butterfly's means, if she was ruthless enough, it wouldn't take long for her to slaughter them all. However, this time Yang Kai wasn't here to kill, but to subdue them, so Butterfly could only block the giant eagles from rescuing them, not daring to hurt them. This made her unable to use her great wizard skills, making the situation very passive. "Bull, hurry up, I can't hold on for long." Butterfly's forehead was covered in fine sweat. Stopping the giant eagle's attacks and wind blades for a long time had taken a toll on her. "I'm trying," Yang Kai replied, sending out another ray of Taming Beast light into the Eagle King's body, but it didn't have the expected effect. Instead, under his continuous attempts, he had already caused considerable damage to the Eagle King. Taming Beast was an extremely overbearing wizard spell, but the Eagle King was unyielding, so the wizard spell couldn't be used. Under the impact of the wizard power, it was bleeding from all 7 orifices. If it wasn't the Eagle King, it was much stronger than the average giant eagle, but it was probably already dead by now. However, with the current situation, it wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. Eagles were proud and belonged to the sky. No shackles could stop their freedom. Coldly staring at the pair of red eyes, Yang Kai said, "You should be able to understand my words. Even if you don't, you should understand what I mean. You only have 2 choices. Submit, or die. I don't have much time, and you don't have that many opportunities either. Choose wisely." Just as he finished speaking, another beast taming light was released. This time, the beast taming light did not enter the Eagle King's body. Instead, it was repelled by the Eagle King's powerful will. Yang Kai cursed as a ferocious look appeared on his face. He rolled his eyes and suddenly raised his hand. A moon blade flew out. It accurately cut into the body of a giant eagle, splitting it into 2. The blood-curdling screech came to an abrupt end. The giant eagle's blood and internal organs scattered in the air, and the 2 halves of its body fell into the deep ravine. Butterfly looked back at Yang Kai in astonishment. She didn't know what was going on with him. Yang Kai looked at the Eagle King and sneered, "If you refuse once, I will kill one of your companions. Let's see how many times you can refuse." As he spoke, he once again used the beast taming technique. This time, the beast taming light was not repelled, but the Eagle King was still resisting and unwilling to cooperate. Yang Kai did not hesitate. With a raise of his hand, another giant eagle was cut in half and fell from the sky. Screech! The Eagle King cried out, obviously becoming very angry. If it wasn't for Yang Kai using the wizard technique to bind it, it would have immediately rushed up and fought with him to the death. Yang Kai was not surprised but happy. He nodded and said, "Good, good, good, angry is good. If you don't want them to die, just obediently lower your head." The beast taming technique could be traced back to ancient times and looked forward to the future. In the star boundary, there was a famous beast taming school. This school was famous for their ability to tame monster beast. Every disciple in the school had a few beasts, and when fighting with others, they had the advantage. However, the beast taming school's beast taming technique was extremely gentle, but it was also very complicated and time-consuming. Yang Kai didn't know the mysteries of the beast taming school's beast taming technique, but he thought that it should have originated from the beast taming technique of ancient times. No matter how despicable and sinister the method was, it was only for one purpose, to make the monster beast submit and be used by them. As long as they could achieve their goal, there was nothing wrong with using some methods. With Yang Kai's current strength, if he was given enough time, taming an Eagle King like this wouldn't be difficult. But the key was that he didn't have much time. He had to rush back to King City as soon as possible, in case there was any battle there. The Eagle King was stubborn and untamed, so he could only use some strong medicine. Perhaps it didn't care about its own life and death, and would rather die than live in Dishana. But as the king of a clan, if it couldn't protect its own people, that would be the greatest failure of duty. For any proud creature, this was something that couldn't be tolerated. Every time Yang Kai killed a giant eagle, the Eagle King's mood became more and more irritable and uneasy. The wizard's chains that bound it were clearly distorted by its struggle. Yang Kai's expression didn't change, and he killed 10 giant eagles in succession. Only then did the crazily struggling Eagle King suddenly stop its movements, revealing a pleading expression. It could probably see that if it really didn't submit, Yang Kai would really kill all of its people. Yang Kai observed the Eagle King's expression and knew that it was time. He used the beast taming light again, and this time, the beast taming light wasn't reflected or blocked. It easily broke through the Eagle King's defenses and directly branded into its body. Yang Kai's body shook. He could clearly feel that there was an additional layer of connection between him and this giant eagle, as if he could control its life and death at any time. And the arrogant Eagle King also became docile at this moment, lowering its noble head. Time to go. Yang Kai grinned and patted the Eagle King's head, then took out a few healing pills and handed them over. The Eagle King looked at them with a very human-like look of curiosity in its eyes, but it still swallowed the pills in one gulp. Once the pills entered its stomach, the Eagle King's spirit was clearly lifted. Its originally dispirited spirit from Yang Kai's torment was rejuvenated. Yang Kai tried to communicate with it. The Eagle King immediately responded. The giant eagles that had been gathered around and didn't show the slightest fear or even retreat even when Yang Kai killed them, seemed to have received some kind of order. They all stopped attacking and flapped their wings to circle in the air. Seeing this, Butterfly couldn't help but sigh in relief. She looked back and asked, "Did it work?" Yang Kai nodded. Butterfly then put away the wizard's shield, her face slightly pale. "You rest for a while, I'll take care of the rest." Yang Kai ordered, then communicated with the Eagle King for a while. Although the Eagle King hadn't reached the level of shapeshifting, it was already intelligent. Yang Kai didn't need to use much effort to communicate with it. He had the Eagle King give the order for all the giant eagles to return to their nests. A moment later, the giant eagles circling in the air returned to their nests. Yang Kai then led the Eagle King to visit them one by one. If Yang Kai came alone, these giant eagles would definitely treat him as an enemy and attack him without any explanation. However, with the Eagle King by his side, the situation was different. Under the Eagle King's suppression, none of the giant eagles had any thoughts of resistance. They obediently stayed in their nests and allowed Yang Kai to plant the beast taming light in them. The process was extremely smooth, and he succeeded every single time. There was not a single failure. After busying himself for an hour, Yang Kai had subdued all the giant eagles. After a careful count, there were as many as 76 of them. Yang Kai couldn't help but be overjoyed by this harvest. With so many giant eagles, a vague idea in his mind could be implemented. After an hour of recovery, Butterfly was also full of energy. The two of them immediately rode on the Eagle King and returned the way they came. Behind the Eagle King, there were 76 giant eagles in a continuous line, forming a shadow that seemed to want to cover the earth. The giant eagle's flying speed was extremely fast, not at all inferior to a great wizard's flying speed. Moreover, their backs were extremely stable, without any interference from the airflow. In less than half a day's time, they arrived at the sky above the capital. From afar, they could hear an uproar below. Someone even exclaimed, "Savage beasts are attacking." Many barbarians from all over the country heard the commotion and moved. The archers all drew their bows and aimed at the Eagle King who was leading the way. There were also great wizards who chanted incantations and flew into the sky. Their bodies shone with the light of a wizard's shield as they charged towards the Eagle King. The distance between the two sides was quickly closing. Waves of bright and dark wizard power undulated in all directions. Seeing that the attack was about to start, Yang Kai quickly stood up from the Eagle King's back and shouted, "Don't be nervous, don't be nervous. The sudden appearance of a person on the Eagle King's back shocked many barbarians. The great wizards who were charging towards the Eagle King were even more dumbfounded. One of them rubbed his eyes hard and said in surprise, "Wizard awesome?" The battle between young Kai and the Wizard 2 yesterday caused quite a commotion. Many great wizards had seen it from the beginning to the end. Naturally, they had a deep impression of this thin and weak Wizard 2. Therefore, when they saw young Kai, many of them immediately recognized him. In the crowd, the Wizard 2 jumped out and said in a daze, "Wizard awesome, where did you get so many savage beasts?" Young Kai smiled slightly, "Of course I caught them." Caught them. Everyone's eyes twitched when they heard this. If these flying beasts were so easy to catch, they wouldn't be so surprised. If it was just one, it could be said that the Wizard awesome was lucky. However, these giant eagles were obviously a group. There were 70 to 80 of them. How could they catch them? Young Kai stood on the Eagle King's back and said in a clear voice, "These are the wizard's aerial mounts." "What do you think, Master?" Aerial mounts. The great wizards weren't idiots. Although it was their first time hearing about aerial mounts, they instantly understood what young Kai was planning. In the next moment, many people's eyes turned red. They looked at the giant eagles with eyes full of desire. The war was about to start. If they could have such aerial mounts, they would have a unique advantage in terms of intelligence gathering. Chapter 2846. Oh my, I forgot. It's April Fool's Day today. I was wondering why so many beauties were confessing to me today. What a waste of joy. Above the city, 75 huge eagles soared through the air apart from the Eagle King. An archer sat on the back of every single eagle. These archers clung onto the feathers on the backs of the eagles firmly. All of their faces were pale. Some of them even vomited in the air, but they persisted. They were not wizards, so they had never experienced the wonders of the sky. They were obviously not used to riding eagles recklessly into the sky. However, they were all barbarians. They were born with great resilience and adaptability. They only needed a few more days, and they should be able to take a turn for the better. These were the aerial cavalry under young Kai's command. Ahua, who came from Tsungnan village, was the captain of the aerial cavalry. Young Kai had not appointed Ahua as the captain of the aerial cavalry through favoritism. Instead, he had chosen her through a competition between many archers. All the archers of the barbarians were godly archers. Not only did they have great eyesight, but they could even hit the wing of a mosquito from several hundred meters away. With such impressive abilities, there was obviously no one who wanted to be below them. When the aerial cavalry was established, every archer had their eyes set on the position of captain. Young Kai did not say anything about it, only letting them compete in archery. Whoever was the best would be the captain of the aerial cavalry. In the end, the archers that had been carefully selected were dragged out for a stroll. When they returned, Ahua was filled with pride, while the others were all docile and obedient. However, even as the captain, Ahua, she found the training of aerial cavalry rather difficult. Every time she descended from the sky, she would directly collapse on the ground, unable to return to her senses for quite some time. Within young Kai's encampment, there was a newly constructed wooden hut. It was extremely simple, but it did provide shelter from the wind and rain at least. Currently, young Kai and Butterfly were meditating and cultivating inside. Young Kai slowly withdrew his soul sense and nodded. Ahua and the others are improving very quickly. They should be able to go into battle in another 2 days. Butterfly opened her eyes and glanced at him. She said, "I wonder what demon folk are like. Although aerial cavalry is nimble, they're far too obvious a target. If they have long-range attacks, this aerial cavalry probably won't be of much use." Young Kai smiled. Being able to investigate the enemy's situation is the greatest use. At this moment, the voice of the old wizard's apprentice came from outside the house. "Master Wizard Bull." Without waiting for him to finish, young Kai shouted with a dark face, "Tell them to scram. I won't see any of them." Ever since young Kai brought back more than 70 giant eagles 2 days ago, the other great wizard came to visit one after another. All of them were full of enthusiasm, as if they had known Yang Kai for many years. When they arrived, they even prepared some small gifts and politely presented them. Under normal circumstances, the gifts prepared by the Great Wizard would naturally be extraordinary. However, for someone as wealthy as Yang Kai, the gifts given by these country bumpkins were nothing to him. The great adepts slowly revealed their true intentions as they continued to argue with each other. They hoped that Yang Kai could share a few of the giant eagles with them. Everyone could see that these giant eagles could be used to investigate the enemy's situation, so they all wanted to take a few back from Yang Kai. For this kind of rude, shameless, and even unreasonable request, Yang Kai naturally refused without hesitation. What kind of joke was this? 75 giant eagles were all subdued by Yang Kai one by one, and they were just enough to form a medium-sized air cavalry unit. If they were divided up among others, what was the point of him going through all that trouble to catch them? After being refused, the Great Wizard naturally didn't give up easily. They either tried to reason with him, move him emotionally, or even threaten him with force. Without exception, they were all thrown out of the wooden house by Yang Kai. The few Great Wizard who tried to fight him were beaten black and blue. Now, Yang Kai's reputation in the southern barbarian tribe was very bad. All the Great Wizard knew that this guy was selfish, bad-tempered, and didn't listen to others at all. Even so, there were still many Great Wizard who shamelessly came to visit, hoping that there would be some miracle to change Yang Kai's mind. So when he heard the old wizard's report outside, Yang Kai thought that it was some idiot who wanted to share the giant eagles with him. His mood suddenly became bad. If he had the time to talk to them, he might as well practice. Suddenly, another person's voice came from outside the door. It sounded familiar. "Wizard Bullmaster, the Wizard King Master wants to see you." Yang Kai was stunned for a moment, then immediately got up and opened the door. Seeing a simple and familiar face, he couldn't help but grin. "It's you." This guy was the wizard messenger he saw in Tsungnan village before. Yang Kai didn't know his name, but he remembered this simple and honest face. The sorcerer chuckled. "That's me." Yang Kai's expression became serious. "The Wizard King Master wants to see me?" The messenger nodded. "Yes." Yang Kai said, "Then let's go." On the way, Yang Kai asked the messenger why the Wizard King wanted to see him. The messenger was also vague, and it wasn't clear whether he didn't know or didn't say. However, Yang Kai didn't have any intention of making things difficult for him. He just chatted with him on the way, which made the messenger feel flattered. Over the past few days, Wu Nyo's name had spread throughout the entire King City. Everyone knew that this skinny Great Wizard was not someone to be trifled with. He had only been in the King City for a few days, but he had already beaten up more than a dozen Great Wizards who were more powerful than him. He had even formed an air cavalry that used giant eagles as a carrier. The 70 to 80 giant eagles would hover over the King City from time to time and drop a pile of feces on people's heads. This made the residents of the King City hate Wu Nyo to the core. They could not wait to rush out and beat him up so badly that even his own mother would not recognize him. Before the messenger came, he was also a little scared. Who knew that after seeing Yang Kai, he would find that this person was not as fierce as the rumors said. Instead, he was very amiable, which made him feel that the rumors were wrong. The two of them chatted along the way and soon entered King City. In the palace, they saw the sixth wizard King Dang. The wizard Bull greets the master. Yang Kai put his hand on his chest and saluted. "I don't know why the master summoned me." The wizard Dang was not far away. The captain of the guards stared at Yang Kai with a sharp gaze. It was as if two sharp blades were stabbing into his mind and prying into the secrets in his heart. Yang Kai frowned and looked back at him. He thought that this guy was crazy. Every time he came, he would look at him like this. It was as if he would be at a disadvantage to the wizard Dang at any time. The wizard Dang turned around and said with a smile, "Sit down and talk." Yang Kai withdrew his gaze and didn't stand on ceremony. He said, "Thank you, master." He sat down as soon as he finished speaking. The wizard Dang said with a kind face, "I didn't call you here for anything important. It's just that I heard some interesting things in the past few days." "Oh." Yang Kai looked at him in surprise. The wizard Dang smiled. He thought that Yang Kai would ask him something interesting, But he didn't say anything after that. The wizard Dang's expression was a little awkward. He could only cough lightly and say, "I heard that you spent a lot of money to buy many weapons from the city for the soldiers under your command." Yang Kai suddenly looked like he was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. "Wizard King, Master, for this war, this subordinate has spent all of his family's wealth selflessly. The wealth that I have accumulated for a lifetime has been scattered. This subordinate is loyal to the great barbarian tribe. My heart can be seen by the sun and the moon, the heavens, and the earth. It's hateful that those unscrupulous merchants actually raised my price at this time. They raised the price by 20% to 30%. They are really the cancer of my barbarian tribe. It's a shame." As he finished speaking, his spittle flew everywhere, and his expression was one of hatred. The wizard Dang's mouth twitched slightly. He couldn't help but look at Yang Kai a few times. He didn't know how to respond. As the Wizard King, he had seen a lot of storms, but it was the first time he saw Yang Kai like this. He had only said a few words, but the other party was already talking like a river. He was pouring out bitter water. One after another, extremely novel words came out of his mouth. It was actually interesting. With a serious face, Yang Kai lowered his voice and said, "Wizard King, Master, did you call me here this time to punish those unscrupulous merchants? The barbarian tribe is facing a great disaster. It's fine if these guys don't provide convenience, but they actually raise the price. They really need to be severely punished. If the Wizard King, Master, has such intentions, this subordinate is willing to testify. I guarantee that none of them will be able to escape, and all of them will be punished. This will eliminate the business atmosphere of the southern barbarian tribe." This time, even the guard captain, who had been standing there quietly, couldn't help but twitch his mouth. The wizard King Dang helplessly waved his hand and said, "This king doesn't have such intentions. Business is a matter of mutual consent. It can't be forced. Those merchants didn't do anything wrong." "Oh." Yang Kai suddenly showed a disappointed expression, but soon his eyes lit up and said, "Could it be that the Wizard King, Master, is going to reimburse me for part of the expenses?" "What?" The wizard Dang was startled. "Reimburse?" Yang Kai looked at him seriously. "This subordinate has already spent all of his family's wealth, and now I have no money. If I want to buy anything, I'm afraid I won't be able to. King City has a lot of businesses, if you can, impudent." The guard captain finally couldn't listen anymore and shouted angrily, "How dare you talk nonsense in front of the Wizard King, Master?" Kai Yang glanced over at him and rolled his eyes, causing the guard captain to become even angrier. The wizard Dang helplessly smiled. He realized that it was unrealistic to chat with this wizard Dang. He could only prepare to get straight to the point. "Wizard Dang, actually, this king called you here because I have something to tell you." Yang Kai sat up straight and still. "As long as you don't talk about the things in the sky, you can talk about anything else." The wizard Dang said, "I just want to chat with you about the things in the sky." Yang Kai sullenly said, "No way, King City also wants to take advantage of my aerial cavalry." "Wizard King, Master, are you kidding me?" Before he came here, he had a bad feeling. After all, he had just seen the wizard Dang a few days ago. If there was really a war, he wouldn't have summoned him alone. And other than those giant eagles, there was probably nothing else that could catch the Wizard King's attention. This trip probably bodes ill rather than well. Chapter 2847. Now, it seemed that Wu Dang had summoned him for the giant eagles. It was obvious that the royal city wanted to get a share of the pie from him. If other great wizard wanted to get some giant eagles from him, Yang Kai could refuse without hesitation. He could even beat them up. Since they were on the same level, it didn't matter if they were beaten up. However, if King City asked for it, he was afraid that he couldn't do anything. How despicable. "Master, I saw that King City also has aerial mounts a few days ago. My giant eagles are wild beasts in the mountains. They can't be tamed. I'm afraid they won't be presentable." The wizard smiled. "King City does have some aerial mounts, but there aren't many of them. Flying wild beasts are difficult to tame. To be honest, I'm very surprised that you could tame so many wild beasts at once." Yang Kai immediately said, I spent a lot of effort and spat out a few liters of blood. I almost died there. The wizard said, so King City won't take your giant eagles for free. Yang Kai was suddenly interested. His eyes lit up. Then how many giant eagles do King City want? What price are they willing to pay? Since he couldn't do anything, he could only try to minimize the losses. King City could ask for the giant eagles, but they had to show some sincerity. Yang Kai's giant eagles didn't come from the wind. The wizard's expression turned serious. Half. You can name your price. As soon as she said this, Kai Yang jumped up from his chair like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He angrily said, half? Master, you really dare to ask for so much. How about I give you all the giant eagles? This sudden action shocked the guard captain. He pulled out his weapon and stared at Yang Kai vigilantly. The wizard patted him on the shoulder and smiled. It's rare that you have this kind of heart. It would be impolite for me to refuse. Yang Kai looked at him blankly, his eyelids twitching. Master, I have a question. Ask. The wizard raised his eyebrows. Do you have any shame? The wizard laughed. That's why I said you have to name your own conditions. He didn't mind Yang Kai's rudeness at all. This made Yang Kai a little surprised. He immediately felt that this wizard king was also a wonderful person. Yang Kai was silent for a while before he said, I'll give you 25. I'll keep 50 for myself. With this number, I'll be able to use them in a small-scale battle. If it's any less, it won't be of any value. Royal City only wants the giant eagle for reconnaissance, right? The wizard did not deny it. He nodded and said, that's right. It doesn't matter how many there are. 25 giant eagles, plus the aerial cavalry of Royal City, are enough for reconnaissance. Wizard Dang still wanted to say something, but Yang Kai interrupted, 25. This is my limit. Fine. 25 is fine, I won't make things difficult for you. Wizard Dang readily nodded in agreement. It was obvious that he was mentally prepared. He raised his head and said, then what are your conditions? Yang Kai immediately said, give each of my subordinates a set of armor. Wizard Dang looked at him with a strange expression. Yang Kai scratched his face. All right, 1,000 sets of armor should be enough, right? Wizard Dang shook his head, let alone 1,000 sets, Royal City can't even take out 100 sets. Is Royal City that poor? Yang Kai was shocked. It's not that Royal City is poor. Wizard Dang smiled helplessly, it's just that most of the resources in the city have been swept away by the great wizards. If we really want to talk about it, you were the one who started this. You gave 3,000 people weapons at once. How could the other great wizards not show some sincerity? Otherwise, how could they convince the people? Although they don't have as much wealth as you, if each of them bought a little, how many things in the city would be enough for them to divide? That's true. Yang Kai nodded. He knew that Wizard Dang wasn't lying to him. In the past few days outside the city, there were indeed many barbarians who were equipped with weapons and armor. They must have been bought by the great wizards themselves. It was just that they couldn't equip everyone, so they could only give priority to a few people. Let's not talk about the resources anymore, I can't do anything about it. Yang Kai thought for a moment. If the resources are not enough, then give them to people. Wizard Dang narrowed his eyes. What kind of people do you want? Yang Kai grinned and said, it just so happens that I don't have enough wizards under me. Master, why don't you transfer a few wizards under me? How many? 5. Yang Kai smiled. 5 giant eagles for 1 wizard. It's a very good deal, Master. 5 is too much, I can only give you 1. What kind of wizard is so precious? Yang Kai was shocked. Master, can you show some sincerity? Wizard Dang coldly snorted. You want 5 wizards, do you have sincerity? Yang Kai calmly said, raise the price on the spot and pay the price on the spot. Business is like this. At most 2, this is my limit. If it's not enough, then you can go back. Just go back and pretend that this prince never mentioned this matter. How can it not be enough? Yang Kai hurriedly said, 2 it is. Who told you to be the Wizard King, Master? Wizard Dang reached out and pointed at him. He wanted to scold him but didn't know what to say. Then he turned to the guard captain and said, "Call Yu and Lu over." When the guard captain heard this, he was obviously shocked, but he still walked out without saying a word. After waiting in the hall for a while, footsteps sounded outside the door again. Not long after, the captain of the guards led the two women in. Yang Kai looked up and his eyes couldn't help but light up. Previously, although he had vaguely guessed that Yu and Lu were women, he did not expect that these two women would be so good-looking. Compared to the other barbarians, their appearances could be considered very delicate and pretty. Moreover, their figures were tall and slender. They were actually quite impressive. The most important thing was that these two women actually looked exactly the same. They were clearly a pair of twins. This made Yang Kai particularly surprised. Among the barbarians, the number of wizards has always been very small. Because only those who are favored by the barbarian god can practice wizard arts. In a village, to have a wizard disciple is a very amazing thing. But these twins are actually wizards, which is really rare. What's even more rare is that they have already practiced to the level of wizard. Looking at their young appearance, it seems that they are not much older than Butterfly. With time, their future is limitless. Facing Yang Kai's gaze, the two of them didn't look sideways. With a cold expression, they stepped forward a few steps and said in unison, "Master, you summoned us?" The voice of the two was almost exactly the same. If it was heard by someone who didn't know, perhaps they would think that it was the same person talking. Telepathy? Yang Kai raised his eyebrows and looked at them with shining eyes. Although it is easy for twins to have telepathy, telepathy is a more profound level. When the twins reach this state, no matter what they do, they will get twice the result with half the effort. If they join hands to cast a spell, the power will far exceed their current level. In other words, although Yu and Lu are only wizards, once they join hands, even a great wizard may not be as good as them. Picking up a treasure, Yang Kai was very happy. He just wanted to casually ask for two wizards to fill the gap on his side. Who would have thought that the wizard sent such a pair? The wizard nodded and looked at Yu and Lu. There was a trace of gentleness and love in his eyes. Yang Kai felt that something was wrong. He thought that these two girls couldn't be wizards people, right? If so, he didn't know if he would be punished in the future if he took them over. Just as he was feeling nervous, the wizard said, "From today onwards, you will follow this wizard master cow and listen to his orders. Do not disobey." Hearing this, Yu and Lu turned their head to look at Yang Kai and said, "Greetings to the wizard master cow." Their tone was flat, without the respect that many wizards have for a great wizard. Yang Kai put on the posture of a master and nodded, "No need to be so polite." The wizard smiled. Yu and Lu have been living and practicing in the wizard temple since they were young. They just returned to King City a few days ago, so they don't know much about the ways of the world. In the future, when they follow you, you can freely discipline them. If they don't listen to your orders, you can also punish them at will. Sorcerer Temple. Yang Kai's expression turned solemn. The wizard temple was the spiritual place of the entire barbarian tribe. It was the symbol of the barbarian tribe. In the sorcerer god's shrine, there was a statue of the sorcerer god. Only the most outstanding sorcerers from each tribe were qualified to enter the sorcerer god's shrine to cultivate and serve the sorcerer god. Under normal circumstances, the wizard who came out of the wizard temple all practiced exquisite wizard techniques. Their strength was outstanding, and they were basically invincible in the same realm. Yang Kai inherited the knowledge of Qing, so he also knew the status of the wizard temple in the hearts of the barbarians. In the past, he had even considered going to the sorcerer goddess's shrine if he had the chance. He wanted to see if he could learn something from it. However, the invasion of the devil people made his plan fall through. But he didn't expect that now there were two wizards from the wizard temple standing in front of him. No wonder they could cultivate to such a realm at such a young age. If they could enter the wizard temple, then Yu and Lu's talent for cultivation was beyond doubt. They were definitely the most talented wizard in the entire southern barbarian tribe. The wizard smiled. "With your talent, if this accident didn't happen, you can also enter the wizard temple. So, live well, wizard is awesome. The really powerful wizard techniques can only be passed down in the wizard temple. If you want to appreciate the brilliance, Then become stronger and save your life in this war. Yang Kai said solemnly, "Yes, I will follow the master's teachings. Go." The wizard waved his hand and said no more. Yang Kai held his chest and retreated. Before Yu and Lu left, they looked at the wizard reluctantly and said together, "Master, take care." The wizard nodded gently. Only then did Yu and Lu turn around and walk out of the hall. Immediately, only the wizard and the captain of the guards were left in the hall. "Master, he's just a great wizard. Why did you give Yu and Lu to him?" The captain looked at the wizard in confusion. Obviously, he was troubled by the decision he made before. He only wanted 2 wizards. Although the number of wizards in King's City wasn't too many, it wasn't few either. He could have just given him 2, but he gave Yu and Lu. Chapter 28:48. The wizard Nyo didn't know about the relationship between Rain and Dew and the wizard King Master, but the captain of the guards knew about it. The war was about to begin. How could leaving Rain and Dew to a great wizard be safer than staying with the wizard King Master? The wizard Dang said indifferently, "Only by following him will we have a chance to survive." The captain of the guards frowned slightly. He clearly didn't agree with this point of view, but in front of the wizard king, he couldn't show it too obviously, so he could only remain silent. Outside the capital, Yang Kai led the twins back to his base. After a while, he suddenly turned around and said, "Who is Rain and who is Dew?" The 2 girls stopped. The one on the left said, "I am Rain." The one on the right said, "I am Dew." Yang Kai grinned and nodded, "I will remember." The wizard king master said that you 2 have been training in the wizard temple since you were young. The wizard temple. Is it fun? The twins frowned. Rain said in a deep voice, "The sorcerer shrine is the most important place in the entire barbarian tribe. Only the most outstanding sorcerers are qualified to enter and serve the sorcerer god. It is not a place to play around." Dew continued, "Please be careful with your words, master." Yang Kai shrugged. He had a vague understanding of the personalities of these 2 wizards. He didn't say anything else and led the way. He returned to his base in a short while. A group of barbarian warriors and wizard who were training saw him come back with a pair of beautiful twins. They couldn't help but be surprised. Yang Kai clapped his hands and attracted everyone's attention. He said loudly, "These 2 wizards are Rain and Dew. They were specially sent by the wizard king master to the wizard tribe. Now that everyone knows each other, I hope that everyone can get along peacefully in the future and work together to fight against the demon folk." Everyone agreed in unison, and the group of barbarians looked at the twins with eyes full of amazement. If it weren't for the fact that the wizard Rain and Dew's status was too high, there would definitely be people who couldn't help but approach them. The wizard apprentices and wizards respectfully stepped forward and saluted the 2 wizards. Yu and Lu only nodded slightly. He scanned the wizards' members from the Bull clan. "Continue with your training." Yang Kai waved his hand and said to the twins, "You 2 go with them. The wizard temple will only teach you the cultivation of wizard spells. I don't think they taught you how to use your abilities in battle, right? Take advantage of these few days to familiarize yourself with it. Don't be flustered when you're on the battlefield." The twins nodded slightly. Yang Kai whistled to the side and in the next moment, the Eagle King, who was lying on the ground, seemed to have received some kind of order and raised its head. A sharp howl came out of his mouth. The giant eagles flying in the sky responded one after another. Soon, they returned from the sky with the archers and landed on the ground. Many of the archers turned pale and jumped off the back of the Eagle King. They ran around and vomited, and some even wobbled and fell on their butts. "Master, what orders do you have?" Hua carried a longbow on her back and walked over valiantly. Although her face was slightly pale, it was obviously much better than the others. At least her footsteps were not as weak as before. Yang Kai said in a deep voice, "I just received the Wizard King Master's order. He wants me to send 25 giant eagles to King's City." Hua was shocked. 25 giant eagles? Doesn't that mean? Originally, each of the 75 giant eagles was assigned to an archer. If 25 giant eagles were sent out, it meant that 25 of them would lose their right to ride on the Sky Mount. This was unacceptable to any archer. These archers were all elites of the wizard clan. They were carefully selected from among them. None of them were worse than the other in terms of rotation shooting. So I'll give you 1 day. After 1 day, the 25 with the worst performance will return to their respective teams. Do you understand? Hua pondered for a moment and nodded, understood. Yang Kai waved his hand, go. I'll leave this matter to you. Yes. Hua turned around with mixed feelings. When she looked up, 74 pairs of eyes full of fighting spirit looked at her. Needless to say, everyone had heard Yang Kai's words clearly. If they wanted to keep their giant eagles, they had to perform better than the others on this last day. Not long after, 75 giant eagles took to the sky together. The scene was spectacular. Yang Kai returned to the wooden house, swallowed a monster beast's core, and sat down to meditate. A day later, Hua came to report the situation of the Sky Mount. With Yang Kai's approval, 25 archers who performed poorly were eliminated and the rest of the giant eagles were sent to King's City. The following days passed by peacefully. The wizard clan's 12 teams were also training in an orderly manner. As time passed, their cooperation with each other became smoother and smoother. Especially with the addition of Yu and Lu, the shamans of the wizard bull tribe were able to cast a spell that was enough to cover all 3,000 people. This was something that they had not been able to do before. In the past, if they wanted to reach this level, they would need Kai Yang or Dai's help. But now that they had Yu and Lu, Kai Yang and Dai did not need to intervene. The more they interacted with the Rain and Dew twins, the more the wizard realized how strong they were. As expected of a sorcerer from the sorcerer god's temple. The sorcerer spells that they had mastered, their understanding of sorcerer spells, and the timing of their spells were not something that an ordinary person could compare to. Under their guidance, the wizard and wizard apprentices improved rapidly. Although the twins were not cold, they were not cold. In fact, if they took the initiative, they were easy to get along with. So in these days, the wizard and wizard apprentices had become familiar with them. If they had any questions, they would carefully guide them without holding anything back. After a few days, the 2 wizards had built up quite a reputation in the wizard clan. Yang Kai was happy to have nothing to do. He hid in the wooden house all day long and worked hard to train. The level 9 inner core did not give him enough improvement, so Yang Kai started to devour the level 10 inner core. In just 3 short days, he had raised the realm of a low-grade Great Magus to the level of a mid-grade Great Magus. On this day, the peace was finally broken. When the dull sound of the horn sounded in the king's city, all the busy barbarians quieted down. Hundreds of thousands of eyes looked towards the king's city. Everyone smelled the smell of a storm from the dull sound of the horn. Figures flew into the sky and rushed towards the king's city. Not long after, many great wizards arrived at the palace where they gathered last time. This time, the number of great wizards was more than half of the previous time. After all, when they came last time, many great wizards were still on their way and had not yet arrived at the king's city. But today, all the great wizards of the southern barbarian tribe had gathered here. This was basically the gathering of the elites of a large tribe. The wizard Dang was nowhere to be seen in the hall. When the great wizard arrived, they obviously gathered in groups of 3 or 4, discussing the development of the war. However, they had all been training their subordinates outside the king's city recently, so they did not receive the latest news. As a result, they had no idea what was going on in the outside world. They could only wait for the wizard Dang to come and explain to them. A while later, the wizard Dang walked out with a stern expression. The noise suddenly died down. Many gazes were cast over. As soon as they saw the wizard Dang's expression, many people's hearts skipped a beat. They had a bad feeling. Sure enough, the wizard Dang opened his mouth and said, "A few days ago, the Saint Master of Wizards became the demon race's hinterland and fought a bloody battle with the powerful demon folk. In the battle, 3 of them were heavily injured and fell into a deep slumber. Only the Hero Master managed to escape, but he won't be able to fight again for a while." With that, everyone was shocked. Many of the great wizard opened their mouths wide, as if an invisible fist had been shoved into their mouths. They could not close them no matter how hard they tried. They were all extremely shocked. No wonder everyone reacted like that. In an era where there was no wizard god, the saint wizard was synonymous with the strongest. There were only 4 wizard saints in the entire barbarian tribe. A few days ago, they heard the wizard Dang say that the 4 great wizard saints had already taken action. Many people still held onto a sliver of hope, hoping that the 4 great wizard saints could exterminate the demon folk or whatever. However, only after hearing this shocking piece of news today did everyone realize that demon folk were not pushovers either. The 4 great wizard saints had all taken action. 3 of them were heavily injured and fell into a deep slumber. Only one of them managed to escape, but he would not be able to fight again for a while. To be able to beat the 4 wizard saints into such a state, the demon folk clearly had no lack of existences that could rival the wizard saints. Even the wizard saints were not their opponents, so what could they do even if they had more people? Immediately, many people paled. The wizard Dang looked around and raised his voice. However, the Saint Master Wizard Saint's efforts have not been in vain. According to the information that the Master Hero sent over, the strongest demon folk either died or were injured. As a result, the battle between the higher-ups this time was not our loss. Only when they heard him say that did everyone suddenly let out a sigh of relief. The 4 great wizard saints had personally taken action. This was an acceptable result. The Saint Master Wizard Saints needs to rest and recuperate. The powerhouses of the demon folk need to rest too. And, at this crucial moment, the final direction of the war lies in our hands. If we can use this opportunity to kill off all the other demon folk, then we can protect our barbarian tribe. However, if we fail, then this land will sink into the enemy's hands. As a result, we only have one choice: fight to the death. Fight to the death. Fight to the death. In the hall, many of the great wizard saints called out together. Their blood boiled. The wizard Dang looked at everyone's performance in satisfaction. He gestured with his hand, and only then did everyone calm down. The wizard saints' efforts have slowed down the pace of the demonfolk's invasion. They seem to be using the 4 territories they conquered before as a foundation to construct a line of defense. Our mission is to take back these 4 territories and prevent them from gaining a foothold. Master, what exactly do we do? Someone asked. The wizard Dang said, let's all take a look. As he said that, he waved his hand. As the power of wizards surged, a huge map constructed from the power of wizard saints suddenly appeared in the air above the hall. On the map was a large, startling region of red, which made everyone's faces stiffen. Everyone could see it clearly. It was the territory of the 4 territories occupied by the demon folk. Chapter 2849. Outside Royal City, the sound of bugles rang out one after another. One troop after another moved in an orderly manner towards the north. That was the direction where the great battle would take place. The Wizards' Ox tribe consisted of 3,000 people. 10 regular troops, 1 troop of aerial cavalry, and 1 troop of guards were all ready to set off. There were a total of 12 troops, 3,000 people gathered together, but it was completely silent. At the front of the troops, 2 wizards from the Wizard Temple, 4 wizards, and 9 wizard disciples raised their heads and looked up. Yang Kai sat on the back of his Hawk King like a true commander. His sharp gaze scanned across the entire place. Every single clansman straightened their backs, displaying their most powerful side. There was no need to say anything. Yang Kai waved his hand. Set off. With the cry of an eagle, the aerial cavalry set off first, spreading their wings and soaring into the sky. With Yu and Lu in the lead, the many wizards and wizard disciples even worked together to cast a large-scale lightning technique. After being enveloped by the light, it buffed the 3,000 people, making all the clansmen even lighter. With a rumble, the Wizards' Ox tribe left the capital extremely quickly. There were a lot of people, but they moved in an orderly fashion. In the air, Yang Kai sat on the Hawk King's back. He did not waste any time at all. He had been meditating and cultivating the entire time. Earlier in the capital, the wizard Dang's orders were very simple. The demon folk were currently fortifying their defenses and setting up a line of defense, as if they wanted to buy time so that the strongest on their side had enough time to recover. The barbarians obviously would not just sit by and watch, So the various large tribes had already set off right now in an attempt to reclaim the territory of the 4 tribes that they had invaded while the strongest demonfolk were recovering. On the side of the southern barbarians, 100 to 200 troops led by great wizards would surround the demonfolk from the south, eating away at their strength and forcing them to retreat. Afterwards, the wizard kings of the various large tribes would take action, leading everyone in a battle to the death against the demonfolk. This strategy made the early stages of the battle very flexible. None of the great wizard troops had any special missions. All they needed to do was kill the demonfolk they came across. They were completely free to do whatever they wanted. This was exactly what young Kai wanted. His current strength was still in urgent need of improvement. If there was a special mission, he would definitely be too busy. The current situation was the best for him. As long as it was before the final battle. If he could raise his strength to a certain level, there would definitely be a stage for him on the battlefield in the future. After coming to this ancient world for such a long time, young Kai had unknowingly considered the issue from the perspective of the barbarian tribe and was involved in such a war. He could no longer simply be a spectator. More than 150 teams led by the great wizard set off from the capital. As time passed, more and more teams split up and headed to different destinations. In the beginning, the wizard's bull tribe could still vaguely see the silhouettes of their allies. However, after 10 days of leaving King's City, the aerial cavalry could no longer detect any allies within their detection range. Hundreds of thousands of people had been completely scattered across the vast land. Many of the berserkers rushed toward the cruel battlefield with the belief that they would either live or die. 10 days later, young Kai, who was meditating on the back of the Eagle King, suddenly opened his eyes. In front of him, Ahua was riding her giant eagle towards him. When she got close, she suddenly stopped and skillfully stabilized her body. Without changing her expression, she said, "Master, there is a village in front of us. Did you find anything?" Young Kai asked. Ahua shook her head and said, "There is no one." Young Kai nodded and said, "Let everyone rest there. If we continue forward, I am afraid that the days will not be peaceful. Eat and drink to your heart's content and prepare for a big fight." Yes. Ahua accepted the order and left. The team continued to move forward. 2 hours later, they saw a small village as expected. The size of this village was slightly larger than Tsungnan village, but not by much. Most of the houses in the village were made of wood and stone. Outside the village was a mud wall. After entering the village, immediately, some people began to take charge of guarding the surroundings. Some people began to make fires and cook. Everything was in order. Although such a troop had been formed not long ago, it was already a well-trained army. Young Kai also wanted to find a place to rest, but after entering the village, he suddenly felt a sense of disharmony. Faintly, he felt as if a pair of invisible eyes were staring at him. This surprised him. He quietly released his divine sense to carefully investigate the situation of the village. But what surprised him was that he didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, and the feeling of being watched suddenly disappeared. Shaking his head, he called Dai and said, "Tell everyone to be careful. Maybe something will happen." Dai looked at him in surprise. "What did you feel?" Young Kai said lightly, "There is no harm in being careful. This is no longer a peaceful area." Dai nodded and said, "I know." After Dai passed the order, the clansmen became more vigilant. Not long after, the smell of meat began to spread. After marching for 10 days, they basically only had a full meal every day. Even the barbarians could not bear it. At this moment, after smelling the smell of meat, many people's stomachs began to growl. Without waiting for the meat to be cooked, the clansmen began to divide and eat, each with a satisfied expression. At this time, young Kai's heart suddenly jumped. In the perception of his divine sense, dozens of strange and hidden auras appeared out of thin air in the village. Before he could investigate what was going on, he roared, "Enemy attack!" The clansmen who were eating heartily were stunned for a moment. But they quickly reacted. They hurriedly threw away the food in their hands and took out their weapons to guard the surroundings. The dozen or so wizards also hurriedly urged their wizard power, ready to attack at any time. The next moment, accompanied by a strange sizzling sound, A dark aura emerged from the ground. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped the entire village. The clansmen were shocked. No one knew what this was, but they instinctively urged their physique power with vigilance. Demonic chi. Young Kai's eyes narrowed, his face full of shock. This was demonic chi. And it was extremely pure ancient demonic chi. Although he had constantly heard about the invasion of demonfolk in the past, young Kai had also wondered whether the demonfolk of the ancient world were the demon race he knew of. However, because he had never come into contact with them personally, nor did he have too many clues, he was unable to make a judgment. Only when he saw the pitch-black aura with his own eyes did young Kai immediately understand that the so-called demonfolk were the demon race he was familiar with. In the past, when the ancient trolls revived outside Maplewood City, the demonic chi surrounded the city. Who knew how many people had been corrupted by the demonic chi and turned into demonfolk? Even he had been corrupted. Fortunately, the energy in the gold and silver tree had turned into sealing power, sealing the ancient demonic chi in his dantian. Otherwise, he would have lost his mind long ago. The demonic chi was extremely corrosive. Anyone who came into contact with it could be turned into a demonfolk, an existence that was neither human nor demon, enslaved by the demon race. A barren village like this actually hid so much demonic chi. It was clearly a trap. What surprised young Kai even more was that the demonic chi was hidden extremely well. He actually failed to sense it when he used his soul sense to investigate earlier. The demonic chi could not appear out of thin air. Even if it was hidden underground, someone had to activate it. Young Kai also paid great attention to the several dozen unfamiliar auras earlier. With a sweep of his soul sense, young Kai immediately discovered some clues. On the ground, under the cover of the demonic chi, there were bumps on the ground one after another, and those unfamiliar auras were emitted from these bumps. These bumps appeared silently and abruptly, and after a certain extent, they turned into human figures that seemed to be molded by sand. They had complete facial features, but their skin was dry like mud, and their whole body exuded an indescribable demonic chi. These were actually demon folk with unusual abilities. The sudden turn of events caused the 3,000 people to panic. No one had ever experienced such a thing. In the darkness, it was pitch black. Moreover, there seemed to be something hidden in the pitch-black aura that could evoke evil thoughts in people's hearts. It made people involuntarily restless, and they couldn't help but want to kill everything in front of them. The light of the wizard's magic shield lit up in the darkness, like guiding lights, giving the 3,000 people a bright direction. The light on young Kai's body was particularly dazzling, directly spreading out to a radius of 10 feet, making all the demonic chi unable to enter. Concentrate, purify. Young Kai roared and took the lead in waving his hands. Circle after circle of milky white light shrouded the surrounding area. The dozen or so other magi, who were at a loss for what to do, instantly found their pillar of support when they heard this. They imitated the magi and began to cast the 2 magi spells. With this action, the level of the wizard was immediately determined. The light of the wizard spell cast by young Kai could cover the whole village every time, and there were even more. Butterfly's light could only cover half of the village, and under the joint efforts of Yu and Lu, there was not much difference between them. The remaining 10 wizards and wizard apprentices paled in comparison. The worst of the wizard apprentices could only light up a radius of 10 feet. Kai 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 sounds were loud. At the same time when the light of the wizard spell bloomed, the darkness that enveloped the sky seemed to have encountered nemesis, disappearing into the void in large pieces. The thick darkness was fading at a speed visible to the naked eye. The demonic chi that was disturbing between heaven and earth at this moment was constantly moving around to avoid, as if it was alive, but it still couldn't avoid the light of the wizard spell. The situation was good, but young Kai was cold all over. The barbarians didn't know much about the demonic chi, but he had personally experienced it once, so he knew the horror and power of the demonic chi. His 3,000 subordinates were basically all infected by the demonic chi, except for the 10 wizards who activated the wizard shield in time. Once infected by the demonic chi, it was inevitable that they would be turned into demons, and when that time came, they wouldn't recognize anyone, and it would be bloody and ferocious. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, a shrill scream rang out. Following the source of this sound, Yang Kai's heart sank. Chapter 2850. Not far away, there was already a tribesman who had been demonized by the demonic chi. The weapon in his hand viciously chopped off the tribesman's head without mercy. Could it be that the wizard bull tribe was going to be wiped out right after they set off? When the screams were heard, all the barbarians were shocked. No one knew what was going on around them. They could only huddle together in groups of 3 to 5, keeping their backs against each other and being vigilant of their surroundings. After the demonized tribesman killed one of his companions, he did not stop. He once again raised the weapon in his hand and chopped at another person. Yang Kai shook his hand and a wizard chain flew towards the tribesman and tied him up tightly, making him unable to move. More screams were heard, one after another. It was obvious that many of the tribesmen had been killed by their trusted companions. Yang Kai's spiritual sense shrouded the entire village. One wizard chain after another flew out of his hand and bound all the demonized tribesmen. After such a short delay, Yang Kai suddenly realized that the situation was much better than he had expected. The 3,000 warriors of the Voodoo Bull tribe hadn't been completely annihilated. Roughly counting, only 100 of them had been demonized. The rest of the warriors didn't have much of a reaction, they were still conscious. It was just that the omnipresent demonic chi was constantly eroding their bodies. If the demonic chi was not dispelled quickly, it was only a matter of time before they were all wiped out. Yang Kai did not dare to delay any longer. He continuously cast purification on a large scale, and every time he cast a spell, the demonic chi in the surroundings would fade a little. Other than him, the rest of the wizard were wantonly casting their wizard power and wizard spells. The wizard spells that the wizard cast seemed to be the nemesis of the demonic chi. In less than 10 breaths of time, the darkness that had shrouded the world had disappeared and light had returned. Only now did the clansman see the situation clearly. Hundreds of his companions died on the spot, blood flowing like a river. Many of his companions were tied up in chains by the wizard. They continued to struggle, and the eyes of these companions were all crimson black. They looked extremely terrifying, as if they had lost their rationality. A series of meaningless roars came from his mouth. This situation caused everyone to be horrified. On the other side, the dozens of bizarre existences that had emerged from the ground had only fully taken form at this moment, transforming into sand devils that seemed to be made of sand. These sand devils shuddered as a monstrous demonic chi swept out from their bodies, creating a whistling wind. Each of them moved swiftly, and pounced on the surrounding barbarians. Even though he had no idea what was so special about these sand demons, since they dared to charge over, they were enemies. The barbarian warriors roared, raised the weapons in their hands high, and launched a brave and pointless charge. The eagle screeched, and the air riders took to the sky, hovered over the village, and accurately shot down one arrow after another. On the other side, led by Yu and Lu, the dozens of wizards were also chanting spells, and a series of spells bloomed with colorful light. The battle started suddenly, and it ended quickly. Although the dozens of sand demons had successfully launched a wave of sneak attacks under the cover of the demonic chi, the wizard bull tribe members were a little flustered at the beginning, and lost some of their men. The following battle was completely one-sided. No one died, and only a dozen or so people were slightly injured. The dozens of sand demons were all killed. After the fierce battle, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Looking at the dead and demonized companions around them, they did not feel the slightest sense of victory. This was the first battle that the wizard bull tribe encountered since the day they set out from King City, and their opponents were only dozens of sand demons. But even in such a battle, there were also unbearable casualties. This made all the barbarians feel ashamed. Ahu, come here. Yang Kai solemnly waved his hand and called. Ahu responded and walked a few steps to Yang Kai, and said in a deep voice, "Master, what orders do you have for me?" Although they were from the same village before, and they were very good friends, but now Yang Kai was the commander of an army, so Ahu could not call him casually in front of others. A commander should have the dignity of a commander. "Do you feel like something is wrong?" Yang Kai asked while putting his hand on Ahu's wrist. The wizard power surged and carefully checked Ahu's body. Ahu was silent for a moment, and then said, "I feel very uncomfortable." Yang Kai was shocked. "Where are you uncomfortable?" Ahu turned his head and looked to the side. "If I had been more careful, maybe fewer people would have died." Yang Kai was relieved and patted Ahu's shoulder at the same time. "Things have come to this, don't blame yourself, this time everyone is responsible." Waving his hand to dismiss him, Yang Kai looked at him blankly. Because under his investigation, Ahu did not have the slightest abnormality, and there was no trace of being contaminated by demonic qi. But just now, the demonic qi had enveloped the entire village, and the 3,000 people should have been contaminated without exception. In disbelief, he pulled a few more clansmen to check, and found that the situation was the same as Ahu's. All of them were very good, which made Yang Kai frown. It was a good thing that the clansmen were contaminated by demonic qi, but he did not understand why. If all the clansmen were like this, it would be fine, but there were hundreds of people who had been transformed into demons. Thinking like this, he came to the side of a demonized clansman who was being controlled. At the moment, the clansman was in a delirious state, constantly growling, and his eyes were red and black. Yu was standing next to him, constantly casting purification and concentration, but it did not seem to have much effect. The other dozen or so wizard were also busy around the other demonized clansmen. Various wizard spells were cast, but there was no surprising scene. "Master, they can't be saved." Lu came from not far away, and a trace of sorrow appeared in her usually indifferent eyes. Yang Kai did not answer, and his divine sense swept through every demonized clansman, and soon found a common point. Compared to the other clansmen, these clansmen were somewhat weak. Although the barbarians were all strong, there were also differences in strength, and these demonized clansmen were basically at the bottom of the 3,000 people. Obviously, the reason why they were demonized was related to their own strength. The barbarian warriors did not practice wizard spells, but only the physical body. The stronger the physical body, the more vigorous the vitality. On the other hand, the weaker the strength, the lower the vitality. Vitality. Yang Kai muttered to himself, and suddenly an idea popped up in his mind, making his eyes light up. Walking straight to one of the demonized clansmen, Yang Kai reached out and touched his forehead. Everyone watched nervously, not knowing what Yang Kai was going to do. But soon they found that after Yang Kai touched the demonized clansman, his whole body was emitting a dark red vitality, and his body suddenly became a lot taller, as if he suddenly became a lot stronger. Bloodthirst spell. Lu and Yu's eyelids twitched, and they looked at each other in shock. Because they did not hear Yang Kai's incantation, and this bloodthirst spell was cast. In other words, this bloodthirst spell alone, this wizard had reached the level of being able to cast spells from the heart. This was not a level that just anyone could reach, only a few people who had a high level of understanding of certain wizard spells would be able to achieve this. This was something that even they, who came from the wizard temple, could not achieve. Shock was shock, but what was the point of casting bloodthirst spell now? The clansman was already demonized, and it was already difficult to control. If the bloodthirst spell was added, the situation would be. Before they finished this thought, Lu and Yu looked at the clansman who was affected by the bloodthirst spell in shock. After the effect of the bloodthirst spell appeared, a layer of dark red appeared in the clansman's black eyes. Although it was not very eye-catching, it was very obvious when mixed with the black. The clansman who was roaring and struggling, at this moment, seemed to be startled, and stopped struggling. Then, there was a painful groan from his throat, and a trace of consciousness appeared in his eyes. He looked around, and finally fixed his eyes on Yang Kai, and said with difficulty, "Wizard." "Great. Master." Yang Kai looked solemn, and said in a deep voice, "You are a child of the barbarian god, you are a warrior of the barbarian tribe, you have a strong body and a strong will, I believe that you can defeat the evil in your heart, quickly find yourself, your brothers are waiting for you." Pairs of eyes looked at him. As if he had been encouraged, the clansman who had been demonized let out a low roar, and the dark red light on his body became brighter, and even the red in his eyes burned like flames. The darkness in his eyes was like snowflakes under the scorching sun, quickly melting away. The next moment, a dark light suddenly overflowed from the clansman's 7 orifices. It was obvious that the demonic chi that had eroded his body was forced out. Yang Kai raised his hand, and a purification spell was cast, purifying the demonic chi. After the demonic chi left his body, the clansman immediately seemed to collapse, forcing a smile, and fainted on the ground. A few clansmen who were familiar with him quickly went to check, and quickly turned around and said, "He's not dead, he just fainted." Yang Kai nodded, and said, "Wait for him to wake up." Under the investigation of his divine sense, the demonic chi in the clansman's body had disappeared completely. In other words, the hidden danger had been eliminated. "Master, can the bloodthirst technique also restrain the demonic chi?" Rain looked at Yang Kai curiously, with a look of curiosity on her face. Yang Kai ordered his clansmen to bring his demonized companions over, and casually explained, "I don't know the specific situation, but I feel that it is not the bloodthirst technique that can restrain the demonic chi, but the strength of the barbarian tribe's warriors has the effect of resisting the demonic chi. The stronger the strength of the chi, the more it can resist the corrosion of the demonic chi." Chapter 28:51. This was obvious. The reason why Ahu and the others remained unscathed after being contaminated by the demonic chi was because their bodies and vital energies were powerful enough. The 100 or so demonized clansmen were all the weakest existences in comparison. However, after Yang Kai used the bloodlust technique on them, their vital energies would suddenly swell by 2 to 3 times, enough to force out the demonic chi that had invaded their bodies. Yang Kai had only planned on experimenting earlier, but he never thought it would actually be so effective. Looking at it now, if he used the bloodlust technique on his clansmen when the demonic chi surged and stimulated their vital energies, they probably would not be corroded by the demonic chi. The barbarians' understanding of demonic chi was far too shallow. There was far too little useful information. When the demon folk invaded, the 4 tribes were destroyed. None of the 4 great tribes were spared, so there was obviously not a lot of information. Afterwards, the 4 great wizard saints took action and directly sought out the strongest people from the demon race. A great battle ensued. Before setting off from the king city, the wizard Dang had also said that he wanted the great wizard Dang to search for the weaknesses of the demon folk in battle. Now, Yang Kai felt like he had found a way to counter the demonic chi. However, if he used the bloodlust technique too many times, even the strongest clansman would not be able to avoid the fate of premature aging. However, who could care about that when the clan faced a crisis of life and death? As he thought about it, Yang Kai felt like something was off. If the power of vital energies alone could resist the corrosion of demonic chi, then there was no reason for so many cultivator to be turned into demonfolk when the demonic chi surrounded Maplewood City in the past. Although most of the later cultivator did not focus on the cultivation of the body, they had nourished their bodies with the spiritual chi of the world for many years. Their physical constitution was not necessarily worse than his subordinates, Ahu and the others. However, in front of the demonic chi, they had no ability to resist at all. All those who were contaminated by the demonic chi were turned into demonfolk without exception. Their performance was nowhere near as good as Ahu and the others. Out of the 3,000 people under him, only a little over 100 could not resist it. Was it the laws of heaven and earth? This ancient world was at least hundreds of thousands of years away from the modern world. The laws of heaven and earth of the 2 eras were completely different. Under different laws of heaven and earth, the experts that could be nurtured were also different. Just like how he couldn't unleash the slightest bit of his strength after coming to this place from the Emperor realm. The barbarians lived in this ancient world. Under the influence of the invisible but omnipresent laws of heaven and earth, perhaps they had something that the later cultivator did not have. This allowed them to resist the erosion of the demonic chi purely with the power of chi and blood. The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. After hearing Yang Kai's explanation, the other wizards were enlightened. For the first time, Rain and Dew showed respect to Yang Kai. The 2 of them were the most talented wizard in the southern barbarian tribe. As long as they were given enough time, it would not be impossible for them to become wizard king. As an elite of the wizard temple, What they came into contact with and cultivated were the most powerful and profound spells and knowledge of their time. Although they were assigned by the wizard to listen to Yang Kai's orders, to be honest, Rain and Dew did not think that this wizard could be much stronger than them. For a long time, the two of them only regarded Yang Kai as their equal and did not pay the corresponding respect. Because they felt that the two of them would surpass this wizard sooner or later, to reach a height that was difficult for him to reach. But after what happened just now, they found that not all powerful wizards were from the wizard temple. There were still masters among the people. Not to mention other things, just the bloodlust technique that was born from the heart shocked them. It was a technique that none of them could perform, even if they joined hands. At this moment, he found a way to cure the demonized people in a very short time. It was definitely not something that an ordinary wizard could do. This required an extremely wide vision and a huge amount of knowledge as a foundation. Yang Kai's inadvertent performance made the twins respect him. At the same time, under the command of Yang Kai, the other hundreds of demonized people also gathered in one place. Their eyes were all black. Although they were bound by the wizard's chains, they still roared like beasts. They bared their teeth at the people next to them, making everyone's heart palpitate. When Yang Kai waved his hand, a crimson light enveloped these clansmen. A layer of blood mist appeared on each of the demonized clansmen, and their crimson-black eyes slowly bloomed with red light. After activating the power of blood, some of the people quickly regained their consciousness, but some of them needed more time. Black demonic chi constantly flowed out of their 7 orifices. More than 10 wizards worked together to cast a purification spell. Under the cover of the light, the demonic chi was purified as soon as it appeared. Just as everyone was looking on with joy, something unexpected happened. With a muffled bang, a demonized person's head exploded. Red and white matter splashed out, and his body fell limply to the ground. Everyone was shocked. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed. This was not the end. This person's experience was like a prairie fire, quickly spreading in all directions. With a series of explosions, more than 10 people fell to the ground and died. Everyone could clearly see that before these clansmen died, the crimson and black colors in their eyes were constantly clashing. It was as if 2 armies were using these clansmen's bodies as a battlefield, fighting for control of their bodies. When the 2 colors clashed to a certain limit, the people could no longer bear it. Fortunately, among the 100 or so people, only a dozen or so people had an accident. The rest were all saved. The demonic chi in their bodies was forced out, and then they fainted. After everything was done, Yang Kai said in a deep voice, "Remember today. Today's experience is the disgrace of our wizard's bull tribe. In the future, we will definitely make the demon folk pay back 100-fold. An army of 3,000 people had actually lost over 100 people to the sneak attack of several dozen sand demons." Even though a large part of the reason was due to a lack of information, it was still rather difficult for them to accept. Many of the clansmen clenched their fists silently. Their breathing became slightly heavy as they glanced past their companions who had died one by one. They suppressed this fury in their hearts, waiting for the right time to erupt. After ordering the clansmen to take care of their unconscious companions, Yang Kai waved his hand. "Ahua, Master." Ahua took a step forward. "Send people to inform the nearby allies about our experience today. Let them learn a lesson from it." "Yes." Ahua accepted the order and immediately turned around to make arrangements. Although over 100 people had died in the wizard's bull tribe today, it was not all for nothing. At the very least, they learned about the sand demon's elusive methods, as well as the method to counter the demonic chi and save the demonized clansmen. This was extremely important information, so they had to pass it on as soon as possible. Perhaps it would reduce the losses of the other great wizard tribes by quite a lot. "Master, since this is a trap, we can't stay here any longer." Rain took a step forward and said softly. There had only been a few dozen sand demons earlier. If they delayed any longer, who knew whether even more demon folk would appear? Yang Kai nodded. "Pass down the order. Rest here for 15 minutes before setting off." 15 minutes later, the wizard's bull tribe that was ready to set off continued towards the depths of the north in a mighty manner. After everyone had left, a bulge suddenly protruded from an empty space in the center of the village. The bulge slowly rose up, slowly turning into a shriveled sand demon. Its scarlet-black eyes glanced in the direction that young Kai and the others had left in emotionlessly. Suddenly, it dove back into the ground and vanished. Half a day later, in a cave deep in the mountains, the sand demon suddenly appeared strangely. In the cave, a tall, slender woman in revealing clothes that exposed a large portion of her snow-white skin and a short tail behind her glanced at him before suddenly pressing her hand against the sand demon's head. Pitch-black demonic chi surged out from the woman's body, turning into visible streaks of light that wrapped around the sand demon. The sand demon immediately felt like he had been subjected to inhumane torture. His emotionless eyes actually became extremely terrifying, but even with that being the case, he dared not resist at all before the evil woman. All he could do was let her do whatever she wanted. The light in the evil woman's eyes flickered, and images flashed past one after another. They were all scenes of what had happened in the village earlier. Who knew what she had done, but she was actually able to reproduce everything that the sand demon had seen before. However, this method was clearly extremely domineering, not something that a normal person could endure. A while later, the evil woman pulled back, and the sand demon collapsed on the ground. He was feeble all over, as if he was about to die. The evil woman had no intention of paying attention to him at all. She could only sneer. Hateful outsiders, as expected, they attacked. Beside her, a short demon race wrapped in black chi asked, "Master, what happened?" The evil woman turned around and sat on a large stone chair. She propped up her chin with her snow-white hand and lazily said, "It's nothing much, only a few dozen sand demons died. Moreover, these outsiders seem to have a way to restrain us." The short demon race said, "Do you need this subordinate to lead people to those outsiders?" The evil woman shook her head, "No need. Before the demon Saint Master went into seclusion to heal, he gave us the order to just defend and not take the initiative to attack." "Then, are the sand demons going to die for nothing?" the short demon race asked. "Die for nothing?" The evil woman chuckled, but her eyes were bone-chillingly cold. "How could that be? I have already memorized the appearance of that leader. Once the demon Saint Master recovers, I will personally settle the score with him." As she spoke, she licked her lips with her pink tongue, as if she was very hungry. Her coquettish appearance caused the short demon race to tremble. He forced himself to look away, his back drenched in cold sweat. The Queen Master was a famous succubus demon. Even among the 100 races of the demon race, she was one of the top existences. The men that were targeted by her never had a good ending. Even if he was a demon commander, if he was immersed in the Queen Master's light of charm, he would quickly lose his mind and become her plaything. Being able to spend a night with the Queen was wonderful, but if he became a walking corpse in the future, it would be a disaster. Chapter 2852. Master, where are we going? Rain looked at young Kai curiously. Ever since they left the village 3 days ago, the 3,000 people had been marching in a very strange direction, sometimes left, sometimes right, sometimes south, sometimes north. There was no pattern to it at all. It was like young Kai had casually given out orders on a whim. Logically speaking, young Kai was the leader of the group, so obviously everyone had to follow his orders. However, such an aimless and strange march always left people scratching their heads. After holding it in for a few days, Rain finally could not help but ask what exactly was going on. "Pass down my orders. Turn southeast and advance at full speed," young Kai called out before glancing at Rain leisurely. He grinned. "Where else can we go?" "To get revenge, obviously." "Revenge?" Rain and Lu, who stood together, were both taken aback. Revenge on who? Where were they going to get revenge? During the past few days, the group had not managed to find any useful information. And, apart from accidentally suffering a sneak attack in the village last time, the past 3 days had been peaceful, which made them wonder whether the demon folk had all retreated or not. Now that young Kai had suddenly mentioned revenge, they were obviously confused. However, young Kai had no intention of explaining it to her. In his mind, a faint connection guided him forward. He gazed in that direction and squinted his eyes. Cold light flickered in his eyes. There was still a sand demon hidden in the village. Yang Kai had learnt this back then. However, he did not kill him immediately. Instead, he secretly attached a sliver of his soul sense to the sand demon. A while after his group left the village, he sensed the sand demon leave in a certain direction as well. Half a day later, he stopped somewhere. During the past few days, the sand demon had always stopped at a certain place, and that place was clearly a demon cavern. His target was that demon cavern. The outcome of the initial battle was not ideal. Against several dozen sand demons, over 100 people had actually died out of a group of 3,000. During the past few days, every single barbarian warrior had been holding back a ball of anger. They were all hoping to encounter other demon folk and have a good battle with them so that they could avenge their fallen companions. That devil's den was the best place for them to vent their anger. On the other hand, the Wizard Bull division also needed a solid victory to boost their morale. These few days of marching were not aimless. From a bird's-eye view, one could see that the Wizard's Bull tribe was patrolling the Devil's Den in a radius of 300 miles. The situation was slightly better than Yang Kai had anticipated. There were no other demon folk in the surroundings. It seemed that the Devil's Den was the only thing that existed within a radius of 1,000 miles. This way, once the Wizard's Bull clan and the Devil's Den start fighting, they won't have to worry about being ambushed from behind. The only problem right now was how many demon folk were in the demon cavern, and what kind of powerful cultivators watched over them. Half a day later, the team marched into a valley. Yang Kai raised his hand slightly, and the 3,000 people stopped abruptly. He ordered the clansmen to rest where they were and take out their own rations to recover. Yang Kai summoned over a dozen wizard subordinates for a secret discussion. When they learnt that there was actually a devil's den 50 kilometers away, they were all astounded. They basically refused to believe it. They had not seen Yang Kai do anything out of the ordinary in the past few days, nor had he left the main group, so where did he get this information from? When they learnt that Yang Kai wanted to personally investigate the devil's den, the wizard subordinates all became worried. Yu and Lu even volunteered themselves. They wanted to take on this mission. Although the two of them were wizards of the southern barbarian tribe, they had cultivated in the wizard temple for so many years, so they still had some grasp over the art of concealment and concealment. A job like this did not require great strength, but if their whereabouts were exposed, the outcome would definitely not be too good. Towards the good intentions of the two sisters, Kai Yang naturally refused. After giving a few more instructions to the wizard subordinates, Yang Kai suddenly vanished with a flash. Butterfly was used to this, but the other wizard subordinates could not help but drop their jaws. They looked around, trying to find Yang Kai, but how were they supposed to find him? A while later, Yang Kai drifted over like a ghost in the demon cavern 50 kilometers away. The demon folk guarding the entrance were like decorations. This was the belly of a mountain. The interior seemed to have been hollowed out. It was huge, and the tunnels in the belly of the mountain twisted and turned. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. Yang Kai held his breath and focused. He hid himself as he investigated the situation here. Without knowing whether there were any powerhouses watching over this place, Yang Kai was afraid to release his soul sense recklessly. He could only investigate bit by bit. There were indeed quite a few demon folk in the demon cave, and these demon folk didn't seem to belong to the same race, because they all had different sizes. The tall demon race members were even more majestic than the strongest barbarian race warriors, while the short demon race members were only 3 feet tall, as if they were pocket-sized people. Without exception, these demon folk all exuded a kind of demon chi that Yang Kai found extremely disgusting. The uneven density of this demon chi showed the difference in their strength. This was the first time he had come into contact with a demon race at such a close distance. He had no idea what kind of abilities they possessed, so Yang Kai dared not lower his guard at all. Moving through the demon cavern, Yang Kai discovered another phenomenon that gave him a headache very soon. There were actually quite a few demonized barbarians here. These barbarians were clearly the clansmen of the 4 destroyed tribes. According to the reports, the 4 tribes had been completely wiped out, without a single survivor, but that did not seem to be the case now. It was just a portion of the barbarians that had been demonized into demon folk. He could tell that there was a huge difference in status between the demonized demon folk and the proper demon folk. Any demon folk could order them around, while the demonized barbarians did not complain at all. Instead, they were extremely cautious and fearful before the demon folk, obeying their orders with their heads lowered. They were like slaves. Not only were their regular clansmen demonized, but young Kai even saw a few wizards. The strongest one was clearly a wizard. Yet now, this wizard, who was extremely noble even among the barbarians, had been ordered around by a short demon folk like a servant. He allowed the demon folk to scold and beat him as he pleased, without complaining at all. Shaking his head slightly, young Kai continued deeper in. Not long after, a beast-like roar suddenly rang out. The roar was mixed with an indescribable evil aura. Kai Yang furrowed his brow and followed the source of the sound. Not long after, he arrived at a huge cave. In the darkness, pairs of scarlet eyes suddenly lit up, as if they had sensed something. They all looked towards young Kai. Young Kai's expression froze. He hurriedly used the nihility secret technique and banished himself into the void. The pairs of scarlet eyes stared at him for a while before slowly retracting. Young Kai could clearly see that the owners of these pairs of scarlet eyes were clearly demonic chi-entwined beasts. The demon race also had a monster beast. Wouldn't that be a demonic beast? He just did not know how these demonic beasts differed from a monster beast. After carefully observing these demonic beasts for a while, young Kai released his divine sense. After confirming that there was no one around, he suddenly appeared beside a demonic beast and grabbed it. With a surge of his divine sense, he completely enveloped it and stowed it away in the sealed world bead. This action clearly alarmed the other demonic beasts. In an instant, over 100 demonic beasts in the cave stood up together, roaring continuously. A series of hurried footsteps rang out from afar. Clearly, a demon folk had sensed the abnormality here and wanted to see what was going on. However, young Kai's figure had already flickered. By the time the demon folk arrived, young Kai had already disappeared. At this moment, young Kai felt slightly awkward. The teleportation earlier had accidentally brought him to a very unusual place. This place was extremely spacious, dotted with strange stones, making the cave seem hazy and dense. In a room in front of him, there was actually a series of moaning sounds that would make one's heart beat faster. The moaning sounds were mellow and extremely pleasing to the ear. When they reached his ears, it was like a small, invisible hand was plucking at his heartstrings, making his heart itch unbearably. Young Kai hid in the dark shadows with a strange expression. He could guess what was going on even if he used his toes to guess. Quietly scanning with his divine sense, it was just as he had guessed. There was a stone bed in the cave. A muscular and burly berserker lay naked on the bed, and a woman with a graceful figure was sitting on the berserker's body. Her delicate and fair body was heaving up and down. Her head was raised, and her entire body was drenched in sweat. She was gasping for breath. A large expanse of snow-white, dazzling Kai Yang made him feel dizzy and his mouth dry. As for the berserker who was lying motionlessly on the stone bed, it was clear that he had an extremely delighted expression on his face. He was captivated by her beauty, and his strong physique formed an extremely stark contrast with the delicate woman. The strong visual conflict was enough to make any man unable to control himself. Young Kai cursed in his heart and carefully retracted his divine sense. Although he did not carefully investigate, he could feel that this woman was not to be trifled with. She should have the strength equivalent to a wizard king, and a high-grade wizard king at that. She was definitely the strongest person he had encountered in this demon cave. Perhaps she was the leader of this place. The woman's characteristics as a member of the demon race were obvious. Not to mention the faintly discernible demonic chi in her delicate body, just the short tail behind her showed that she was a member of a different race. Fortunately, this woman was immersed in the pleasure of intimacy, otherwise, his actions just now would have definitely alarmed her. Young Kai was not too afraid of an existence comparable to a high-grade wizard king, but this time he was only here to scout for information. It would not be good to act rashly and alert the enemy. Quietly lying in wait, Yang Kai prepared to find an opportunity to leave. On the stone bed, the woman's movements became more and more violent. Her beautiful hair flew in the wind and became messy. Her delicate breathing also became louder and louder. Seeing that the woman was about to reach a critical point and Yang Kai was about to leave, a sudden change occurred. A black shadow suddenly appeared behind him and a dagger swiftly swept towards his neck. This dagger was completely black and did not reflect the slightest light. It was mysterious and traceless. Moreover, this black shadow moved without any warning. Yang Kai, who was in the enemy's nest, did not constantly release his divine sense to be alert. In a moment of carelessness, he actually succeeded. Chapter 2853. It wasn't until he felt a chill on his neck that Yang Kai suddenly became alert, and almost reflexively urged the wizard's power to resist. Kai! With a sound, sparks flew everywhere, and the sharp dagger swept past Yang Kai's neck, bringing out a string of fine blood beads. Although his attack was successful, the person who launched the sneak attack from behind was a little stunned. This was because he could feel that although his opponent was injured, it was only a superficial wound. In other words, his surprise attack did not achieve the desired result. While he was still in a daze, Kai Yang had already turned around and sent a punch towards him. A muffled groan sounded, and in the black fog, a 3 feet tall figure suddenly appeared, his eyes bulging high, his chest almost collapsed, and his whole body hit the stone wall, blood spurting out. After landing, this short demon race showed a look of fear. Seeing Yang Kai punching again, his face changed greatly, and his body shook, turning into a cloud of black smoke, causing Yang Kai's punch to hit empty air. Yang Kai frowned slightly, although a few days ago he fought with the sand demon, but this was the first time he encountered such a short demon race. Such a troublesome ability did not give him the time to find a way to break it. The black fog quickly retreated. At the same time, an extremely sharp cry sounded from behind, like a cuckoo crying blood. And at the same time that the sound entered his ears, Yang Kai's soul shook, and he felt quite uneasy, and an illusion of a demon dancing wildly appeared in front of his eyes. Soul attack. Yang Kai shook his head hard, guarded his mind, and urged the power of his soul to eliminate the effect of the scream. Kai sounds came from behind, and the sound of wind and thunder was loud. Yang Kai suddenly raised his hand, blocking the side of his body. With a light snap, a soft whip made of an unknown material was blocked by him, but it was not over. Although the soft whip that suddenly attacked was blocked, it magically turned a half circle with his hand as the center, and the head of the whip went straight for his face. In a flash, the head of the whip opened its mouth, and the big mouth was densely covered with fangs. Flashing a dark green light, it hissed and bit at Yang Kai. This was not a soft whip, it was clearly a poisonous snake. Yang Kai suddenly stretched out his other hand, and pinched the snake's head with great precision. With a squeeze, the snake's head was crushed. A cry of surprise came from behind, as if it did not expect Yang Kai's reaction to be so fast that even such a killing move could be easily resolved. The next moment, a fragrant wind flew to Yang Kai's side, and turned into a white light, a sky full of palm shadows to envelop him. Yang Kai took a deep breath and stood firm, his hands also transforming into a series of afterimages. Pa, rapid and dense sound, Yang Kai's voice. When the white light retreated, and rested, the rock's cave, it was as if it could collapse SSD. Everything happened in a very short time, since the short demon race hiding in the darkness launched a sneak attack. At this moment, Yang Kai and the white shadow fought in the blink of an eye. Only then did Yang Kai slowly turn around, the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and looked in front of him with a mocking expression. Less than 5 feet away from him, a woman was standing there quietly. Her figure was delicate, making people feel pity for her. However, her figure was very good. She was quite well-rounded. Her lower abdomen was flat, her legs were long and slender, and her skin was so fair that it was as white as snow, as if it could be broken by the wind. It was as if she had just been moistened by rain and dew. This female demon's face was slightly red, and there was a trace of satisfaction in her watery eyes. This female demon was the one Yang Kai secretly observed just now. She fought with the black shadow not far from her, so she naturally noticed it. At this moment, she was completely naked. The most beautiful part of her body was openly displayed, and she did not feel uncomfortable at all. Beside this female demon, a black shadow was floating, and a weak aura was emitted from it. It was obviously the demon race that failed to sneak attack Yang Kai and was injured by Yang Kai. "It's you." The female demon glanced at Yang Kai, and her eyes lit up. She tilted her head and said with an innocent look, "You actually found this place. You're really amazing." Yang Kai grinned and said, "Do we know each other?" The female demon smiled and said, "Don't we know each other now?" Yang Kai nodded and said, "What's your name?" The female demon giggled, and her snow-white breasts jiggled. She said with a teasing look in her eyes, "Demon King Sho Ya." "Demon King?" Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. "If you're the Demon King, then is the Demon King above the Demon Saint?" Sho Ya looked at Yang Kai with a smile and said, "Little brother, are you trying to get information from me? That's not a smart move." Yang Kai shrugged and said, "It's my first time dealing with you, so I'm just casually chatting. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. You're quite interesting." Sho Ya looked at Yang Kai from head to toe and frowned slightly. She said with some regret, "You're just a little weak." Yang Kai sneered, "Being small doesn't mean you're weak. You're also someone who's experienced hundreds of battles. Haven't you encountered a silver spearhead before?" Sho Ya nodded in agreement. "You're right. That's right, above the Demon King is the Demon Saint. Don't you have a saint on your side? A few days ago, they even fought. Don't tell me you don't know about it." "Of course I know. It seems like both sides were injured. It's a pity I didn't see it with my own eyes." Sho Ya looked at him with a strange expression. "You want to see it with your own eyes? Be careful not to lose your life." Yang Kai laughed, "Everything about me is tough, especially my life." Sho Ya said meaningfully, "Then I'll have to take a good look." "You'll have the chance." Yang Kai nodded slightly and changed the topic. "If the Demon Saint is above you, then what's below you?" "What's below me? Can't you see it?" Sho Ya's face suddenly blushed, and her tone became gentle. As she spoke, she intentionally or unintentionally revealed her beautiful charm, and the surrounding atmosphere changed abruptly. Yang Kai swallowed his saliva and looked down. "I see it, I see it." The short devil who had been standing next to Sho Ya suddenly let out a muffled groan and ran away as fast as he could. Sho Ya had used her charm, so he did not dare to stay any longer. Otherwise, he would immediately become her captive and become a walking corpse. "Don't mind him. He's just a useless little thing." Sho Ya smiled lightly, and a faint moan came from her throat. Her delicate body was slightly red, and she bit her red lips. "I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. Can you help me?" "Okay." Yang Kai's eyes were blurred, and while he agreed, he walked forward. His breathing became heavy, and his eyes were like leeches biting on Sho Ya's pure white body. This invasive gaze seemed to be very useful to Sho Ya, and her entire body was filled with unimaginable pleasure. She giggled, and there was a strange magic in her laughter. She opened her arms and hugged Yang Kai. In her arms, Yang Kai, who should have lost his ability to think, suddenly had a flash of light in his eyes. He grabbed Sho Ya's hair and pulled, causing her body to bend backwards. "Ouch!" Sho Ya cried out, and a strange light flashed in her eyes. She frowned. "What are you doing?" Yang Kai revealed a sinister smile. "What do you think I'm doing?" Sho Ya was startled, and said in shock, "How can you?" Looking at his mocking eyes, Sho Ya immediately understood that he was not affected by her charm at all. How is this possible? She was from the famous succubus demon clan among the 100 clans of the demon race. She was also the demon king of the succubus demon clan. Her opponent's aura was clearly several levels lower than hers, and she could easily charm such an opponent. But in fact, the charm she had silently used did not work. His previous confusion was just a disguise. Looking at the mocking and cold look in his eyes, there was no trace of him being charmed. Yang Kai laughed. "You dare to show off your little skill in front of this wizard with a mere charm? You really don't know your place." As soon as he finished speaking, he threw a punch at Sho Ya's full chest. Sho Ya had never encountered something like this before. Her charm had failed, and she was momentarily stunned. It was only when Yang Kai made his move that she screamed in horror. At the same time that she screamed, Yang Kai felt as if an invisible blade had stabbed into his head, causing his head to sink slightly. However, his fist had already landed on Sho Yae's chest. With a boom, the wizard's power exploded. Sho Yae's snow-white and plump breasts exploded, turning into a pool of blood. Using the force of the impact, and taking advantage of the moment when Yang Kai's soul was affected, Sho Yae swung her head, and her hair was cut off. Her whole body slid away from Yang Kai like a loach. After regaining her balance, Sho Yae looked down at her chest with a pale face, and her whole body trembled. The two snow-white lumps that she had always been proud of were now missing one. Blood dripped down from her lower abdomen and flowed down to her legs. "I'm going to kill you." Sho Yae screamed as if she had gone mad. She was from the succubus demon clan, and her beautiful body was one of her assets. Now that Yang Kai had made her look like neither a human nor a ghost, she could not accept it. Although it was not impossible to recover from such injuries, she would need to pay a price to do so. In a moment of carelessness, she had suffered a great loss at the hands of a barbarian who was several levels weaker than her. Yang Kai did not say anything. His body swayed, and he pounced toward Sho Yae again. Although he was here to gather information, since he had already exposed himself, he might as well go all out. It would be best if he could kill this demon king here, and it would not be a waste of time for him to come here. Looking at the barbarian who was charging toward her like an angry lion, Sho Yae instinctively felt a sense of danger. It was as if she would die if she did not leave now. She could not believe this thought when it came to her mind. After hesitating for a moment, Sho Yae decided to follow her instincts. A ring of light suddenly bloomed from her body, sending out an incomparably strong resistance. Flying in front of her, Yang Kai, who had not yet had the time to ruthlessly destroy her, was pushed back a few steps by this ring of light. Chapter 2854. A sand demon suddenly emerged from the ground where Sho Yae was standing, grabbed the injured Sho Yae, and burrowed into the ground, disappearing in the blink of an eye. When Yang Kai pounced again, the enemy was nowhere to be seen. Yang Kai released his divine sense and sensed that the aura belonging to Sho Yae was rapidly escaping. Soon, it was deep underground and out of Yang Kai's perception range, making him feel powerless. Yang Kai could not help but frown at the sand demon's ability. Fortunately, these sand demons seemed to have low intelligence. Otherwise, this special ability alone would be enough to render the barbarians helpless. Sho Yae had escaped, and Yang Kai could not chase after her. Rumbling sounds came from all directions. Obviously, the demon race had sensed the commotion, or had received Sho Yae's order to surround Yang Kai and take him down with their numbers. In the darkness, groups of shadows appeared. Like the short demon race from before, they were a race that specialized in concealment and assassination. But before they could even prepare themselves, Kai Yang let out a sinister grin and pounced into the enemy group like a ferocious tiger descending from the mountain. Wherever he passed, blood mist exploded in the air, like blooming flowers of blood, enchanting and cruel. The black shadows conveyed their feelings of panic and retreated one after another. Other tall demon race warriors rushed out from the surrounding corridors, raised their weapons, and charged at Yang Kai without fear of death. Yang Kai stood in place with Myriad's sword in his hand. He swept his sword around and cut any demon race that dared to charge at him in half. Blood and organs spilled all over the ground, and the cave was filled with the pungent smell of blood. After a fierce battle, Yang Kai was unscathed. The demon race, on the other hand, had suffered hundreds of casualties. All the demon race masters were aware that something was wrong. This guy in front of them was not someone they could contend with, so even if they didn't fear him, they didn't dare step forward easily. Instead, all of them stood in place in horror as they stared at Yang Kai vigilantly. "Are you going up or not?" Yang Kai tilted his broadsword and grinned, "If you're not going up, then I'm going up." The demon race members didn't answer. Yang Kai immediately moved. With a flash of his body, he circled around the cave at lightning speed. When he returned to his original spot, the Myriad's sword was dripping with dark red blood. One figure after another fell to the ground without a sound. Yang Kai sneered, "A bunch of trash." As soon as he finished speaking, his face suddenly changed, and a dark green color appeared on his cheeks. He cried out involuntarily, "Slut, you actually used poison. Shameless." The dark green color was like a living thing. After it appeared on Yang Kai's face, it immediately spread to every part of his body. In the blink of an eye, Yang Kai's entire body turned green. Even the top of his head was emitting a green light. Yang Kai was so angry that his nose was crooked. Ha 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 ha. Sho Ya's maniacal laughter echoed in the cave, her voice drifting in and out. He didn't know where she was hiding and secretly watching. Even with the strength of Yang Kai's divine sense, he couldn't lock onto her. Although the green demon's poison isn't the strongest poison, it is still the most mysterious and difficult to guard against among the 100 clans of the demon race. "Little brother, you're dead. Maybe you can beg me to turn you into a slave and live." Yang Kai frowned and thought back. Among the demon race members he just killed, there was indeed a guy who was green. He looked a little different from the other demon race members. In that case, the demon race member was the green demon that Sho Ya mentioned. However, Yang Kai didn't see any signs of him attacking, and he didn't have any physical contact with the demon race. Even so, he was still poisoned. The green demon's poison was indeed mysterious and unpredictable. It was impossible to guard against. With a cold snort, Yang Kai said in a low voice, "Sorry, I'm not interested in broken shoes." Sho Ya's voice suddenly turned cold. "I'll slap your mouth and make you pay for your arrogance. Broken shoes, broken shoes, broken shoes, your whole family is broken shoes." Sho Ya didn't say anything. She was probably very angry. There was no sound around. There was no demon race member, and there was no sign of Sho Ya. Yang Kai curled his lips and said sarcastically, "If you don't come out, I'm going to leave." There was still no response. Yang Kai nodded. His body flickered and suddenly disappeared. He left as soon as he said he would. After confirming that Yang Kai was gone for a long time, Sho Ya slowly appeared somewhere in the void. She was still covered in clothes, but she didn't look weak and seductive like before. Instead, her face was full of anger. The cold air around her almost froze the flames. The short shadow demon silently appeared beside her and said anxiously, "Master, are we just going to let that guy go?" Sho Ya snorted. "You don't want him to go?" The short demon race said, "He killed many of our people." "Then why didn't you let him stay just now?" Sho Ya turned her head and asked. The short demon race had an awkward expression. He thought to himself, "If even you don't want to face such a madman, how much can I do with my small body?" He had accidentally been punched by him just now and had almost been killed. He couldn't understand how that skinny body could produce such domineering strength. "Mph, he's been poisoned by the green demon. Unless he turns into a member of my demon race, he'll definitely die. Just wait, he'll come back and beg me." Sho Ya sneered. She looked like she had victory in her hands. The short demon race heard this and felt that it made sense. Although the green demons didn't have much of a position in the demon race and were vassals of the succubus demon race, their poison was very effective against creatures that weren't part of the demon race. Once infected by the green demon's poison, there was no other way to get rid of it. Since that terrifying barbarian was already poisoned, there was no need to continue forcing him. Sho Ya's body flashed and disappeared without a trace. The short demon race looked at the corpses around him and sighed. He said, "Throw these into the beast lair." Immediately, many sand demons appeared from the ground and silently moved the corpses into the beast lair. Obviously, they were going to use these corpses as food for the demon beasts. "Master, what is going on?" 100 miles away from the demon lair, as soon as Yang Kai appeared, more than 10 wizards looked at him in shock. The surrounding barbarian warriors also opened their mouths wide and looked at him in a daze. Dressed in green, he looked very delicate and new. Even the top of his head was emitting a green glow. He was very eye-catching in the crowd. If this was any other occasion, people would laugh their heads off. However, everyone knew that Yang Kai had gone to the demon lair to scout for information. Now that he suddenly came back with a green glow, it was obvious that something bad had happened. This made everyone turn pale with fright. Who could still laugh? Pairs of worried and nervous eyes looked at him. Yang Kai was the leader of this team and was the spiritual pillar in everyone's hearts. If something bad happened to him, then this team would have no one to lead them. On the battlefield where the two clans were at war, how much could a team without a leader be of any use? Perhaps the demon race would only need a small counterattack to wipe out all 3,000 people. I accidentally got poisoned. Yang Kai's face darkened. He waved his hand and pushed back the few wizards who were about to approach him. Don't get too close to me. It might be contagious. Contagious. Hearing this, the few wizards who were about to approach him instinctively took a few steps back. They seemed to have realized that their actions were not appropriate. Their faces were slightly embarrassed. Poison of the green demon? Rain suddenly asked. Huh? Yang Kai looked at her in surprise. How did you know? Rain could actually identify the origin and name of the poison. It was obvious that she did not blindly guess. She really knew. But even Yang Kai had only just learned of this matter, so how could you have known? Rain nodded slightly and said, it really is the poison of the green demon. Lu added, then there is no saving him. The twin sisters spoke one after another and directly sentenced Yang Kai to death. Two pairs of beautiful eyes looked at him with pity. How did you know about the poison of the green demon? Yang Kai asked again. The twins looked at each other. Rain said, there is a book in the wizard temple that recorded some things about the demon race. There is very little information, and it is not comprehensive. However, there is a description of the green demon. We came across it by accident. So it was the wizard temple. Yang Kai nodded slightly. From the knowledge passed down by Green, Yang Kai knew that this was not the first time that the demon folk had invaded a large area of land. In other words, the residents of this land had some contact with the demon folk before. Although it had been tens of thousands of years, and basically no one remembered the situation of that war, it was normal for the wizard temple to have some records about the demon race as the most important existence in the entire barbarian race. In the Wizard Ox tribe, the oldest wizard disciple said with a trembling voice, Master and Wizard Ox, is there really no way to cure the poison of the green demon? Rain and Lu shook their heads at the same time. Rain said, although there is no way to cure it, you don't have to worry about it being contagious. The poison of the green demon is not contagious. As she said that, as if to prove what she said, she actually went up and touched Yang Kai's cheek. Yang Kai frowned, but he did not avoid it. When Rain pulled back her hand, there was no trace of the poison at all. This was more or less good news. However, the wizard looked at Yang Kai with a grief-stricken expression. Yang Kai said in a deep voice, what are the symptoms of the green demon's poison? Rain shook her head. The records are not comprehensive. They only mention a few things. All they know is that if you want to cure the poison with the green light that you're shining with right now, you can only be demonized into a demon, or you'll definitely die. I don't know much about the rest. Lu said, Master, do you have any last words? We can pass them on for you. Yang Kai laughed. I'm not dead yet. Lu said seriously, but if you die, you won't have a chance to say anything. Yang Kai nodded. I won't die. I don't know why, but I feel good right now, so please don't worry. Rain and Lu frowned at the same time. They glanced at each other and could see the uneasiness in each other's hearts. Chapter 28:55. As twins, the two of them had practiced wizard spells together for many years and had long reached the level of telepathy. Therefore, even if it was just a simple exchange of glances, they could see each other's thoughts. The poison of the green demon was incurable, but the wizard bull said that he wouldn't die. Then, he only had one choice. How much do you know about the demon race? Yang Kai asked again. Rain collected her thoughts and replied, not much. The information recorded in the ancient book is really little. Other than the green demon, there is also a corresponding red demon. These two demon race caused countless casualties in the last war. Red demon? Yang Kai raised his eyebrows, and some laughable figures involuntarily appeared in his mind, Is it a short and round guy with red skin and hair? Maybe. Rain wasn't too sure. What special ability does the red demon have? Rain said, the red demon is also known as the explosive demon. The only value and use of their existence is to explode. There is such a demon race. Young Kai was shocked. In the demon's den, Young Kai had indeed killed a few red-skinned demon race. Those demon race emitted an extremely dangerous aura from head to toe. They were short, but they were fat and round, like a wooden barrel. When he killed them, he didn't feel anything. Now that he heard Rain's explanation, he knew that these guys were completely born to explode. Thinking about it, if they didn't know this news in advance, they would encounter an army of red demons and the red demons would explode one by one in the battle. The barbarians would definitely suffer heavy casualties. This was another extremely important piece of information. However, regarding the demon race, the Rain sisters only knew about the red demon and the green demon. They didn't even know about the sand demon before. Therefore, they couldn't provide Young Kai with too much information for reference. On the other hand, Young Kai went to the demon's den and obtained a lot of information. He told the wizard what he saw and told them to pass it down so that when the two armies fought in the future, the clansmen would be careful. Subsequently, Young Kai found an open space and raised his hand. A huge black shadow suddenly appeared. It was the demonic beast that Young Kai had captured from the devil's den. This demonic beast's body was surrounded by a pitch-black aura that constantly overflowed. As soon as it appeared, it let out an angry roar, scaring the dozen or so shamans. They all looked at the demon beast in surprise, then at Young Kai. She had no idea how he had managed to conjure such a big fellow out of thin air. However, Young Kai had already placed several restrictions on this demonic beast, and its strength was completely sealed. So, even though it looked ferocious, it couldn't display the slightest effect. There seems to be cavalry in the demon race. These demonic beasts are their mounts. Let's do some research and see if we can find any weaknesses. It would be best if we can use them. If we can't find any weaknesses, it's fine too. I'll just kill them. Kai Yong threw down these words. He then walked to a wooden house that had just been built by the side. A group of wizards immediately surrounded that demonic beast and began studying it in high spirits. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. Young Kai had also been hiding in the wooden house for 2 days without appearing. Nobody knew what he was doing. The army of 3,000 had suppressed their anger and fighting spirit, yet they had nowhere to vent it. Within the devil's den, Sho Wye sat on her own throne. Her tight and revealing clothes accentuated her beautiful figure. The lump of chaotic origin essence that was blown apart by Young Kai a few days ago had regained its majesty. It was unknown what secret technique she had used. It actually allowed her injuries to recover completely. At this moment, her hand was supporting her chin as if she was taking a nap. That short and small demon race stood there silently without any aura. It was like a dead person. After a long time, Sho Wye opened her eyes and said indifferently, "What's the situation over there? Is he not here yet?" The short and small demon race immediately replied, "According to the spies of the Sandmen, the mood of the other races over there is slightly unstable. Instead, that fellow has been hiding all this while without any special movements." Sho Wye sneered, "It seems he is thinking of ways to neutralize the poison of the Green Devil." What a joke. If the poison of the Green Devil could be neutralized so easily, it wouldn't be the most mysterious poison of our demon race. But for him to be able to hold on for 2 days without yielding, he is quite formidable. As she spoke, she stood up. Her beautiful eyes were sharp as she said, "Pass down the order for the clansmen to prepare." The short and small demon race became spirited. "Master, are you going to start a war with them?" Sho Wye sneered, "If he doesn't come looking for me, I'll go look for him, right? It's rare to see such an interesting slave. I don't wish for him to die just like that." When the short and small demon race heard that, he could not help but feel sad for that barbarian. But he still turned around and passed down the order. In an instant, the demonic chi in the devil's den surged and many members of the demon race gathered. Half an hour later, the members of the Bull Wizard tribe, who were 100 miles away, suddenly felt a strange sound coming from the ground. At the same time, the sky cavalry in the sky blew the horn in their hands. The dull sound resounded through the sky. The 3,000 clansmen's expressions turned cold. They all picked up their weapons and got into formation. Young Kai's body was still covered in green light. He quickly walked out of the wooden house and looked up at the devil's den. He saw that the sky there was dark, as if a storm was coming. The darkness was quickly rushing over, trying to cover up the light. Young Kai's mouth hooked up and he sneered. More than a dozen wizards stood in front of the 3,000 clansmen. They all looked at him with worried expressions. Young Kai had been poisoned for 2 days. Although he seemed to be fine now, who knew when he would not be able to hold on? Now that the war was about to start, what if he was affected by the green poison in the battle and accidentally died? In this kind of war, if the commander died, it would be a great blow to everyone. It might even turn the victory into nothing. But at this critical moment, no matter how worried they were, they could not ask. They could only pray in their hearts. Yu and Lu were also prepared for the worst. Young Kai's eyes swept over the dozen wizard and looked at the 3,000 clansmen. He took a deep breath and shouted, "Standing here are the most elite warriors of the barbarian race. They are my wizard companions of the Bull tribe. The demon race has come. Our only choice is to fight to the death with them. Our opponent is the enemy who attacked us in the village a few days ago. A few days ago, we lost hundreds of people, but that is just the beginning. If you do not win this war, then thousands of people will die. They will kill our men, take our women, enslave our children, and conquer our land." The 3,000 clansmen's breathing became heavy. Their fighting spirit soared and gathered into a ball. It was as if they wanted to tear apart the sea of clouds. This war is our first real war, so we only have one goal, to win. Not only do we have to win beautifully. Only in this way can we wash away the shame of the wizard bull tribe a few days ago. My warriors, are you all ready? Roar. The 3,000 clansmen were like 3,000 crazy beasts. Even without the support of the bloodlust spell, their eyes were glowing red. Young Kai smiled slightly and raised his hand to point at the place where the darkness was the thickest. "If you are ready, then let them pay the price." The eagle's cry sounded, and the air riders quickly rose to the sky. Under the leadership of their respective captains, the 10 regular teams did not say a word and quickly rushed to the battlefield. The orderly and dense footsteps made the earth begin to tremble. The guards surrounded the dozen or so adepts, guarding the place with their lives on the line. Cryptic incantations began to ring out as beams of magical light bloomed from the hands of the adepts, enveloping the 10 regular squads in circles. Bloodlust spell, lightness spell, stone armor spell, mega strength spell, life chain. Every warrior's body was glowing with colorful light. Every strong barbarian became taller, with bulging muscles and ferocious faces. Their originally red eyes became even redder. Without any fancy moves, the demon race and the barbarian race charged at each other as if they had agreed beforehand. Looking down from the sky, the two teams with thousands of people converged from different directions. The wide flat ground in the middle was the battlefield. The distance of 100 miles was shortened in just the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. Moreover, the barbarians' desire to fight and kill had soared to the limit after traveling dozens of miles. When the black clouds began to cover the earth, the two armies officially met. The barbarians who were charging at the front were slightly stunned. That was because they saw familiar faces. Those were the faces of the barbarians. Those were the faces of the barbarians of the past. The vanguard of the demon race's camp was actually the demonized barbarians. But at this moment, these barbarians had lost their usual clarity of mind. Every one of them seemed to have gone crazy. It was as if the barbarians in front of them were not their former compatriots, but their irreconcilable enemies. They mercilessly raised the weapons in their hands and fiercely hacked down. Kill. An angry roar sounded. The wizard's bull tribe was stunned for a moment, but quickly recovered. Thanks to the information that young Kai had gathered, everyone was mentally prepared to encounter such a situation in the battle against the demon race. Every barbarian had asked themselves if they would be able to kill the demonized barbarians if they were to encounter them. No matter what the current situation of these barbarians was, they were barbarians. They had their own brothers and sisters. Maybe there was a chance to save them. But soon, everyone realized that this kind of thinking was meaningless. If they were to encounter such a barbarian on the battlefield, letting them die quickly would be the best relief. Showing mercy to them would be irresponsible to their companions. In front of the crowd, Tiger jumped up high. He jumped 100 feet high, and fiercely hacked down with the giant axe in his hand. The attack had not yet arrived, but the sharp aura of the giant axe had already caused the skin of the demonized barbarian to crack open. By the time Tiger landed on the ground, the barbarian had already been split into two. Tiger raised the giant axe high, and fiercely roared, "Kill!" Chapter 28:56. Pieces of flesh and blood flew everywhere. The battlefield seemed to have turned into a giant meat grinder, shredding all the living creatures that entered it into pieces. One by one, the demonized barbarians fell to the ground. Although they were also born in the barbarian tribe and had strong bodies, they had not been blessed with any witchcraft. After being demonized, they had lost their independent thinking. Now, they were only humanoid weapons that were purely occupied by the idea of killing. How could such an existence fight against a real barbarian that was well equipped, filled with killing intent, and blessed by the wizard's spells? Therefore, when the two armies clashed, the demon race suffered heavy casualties. On the other hand, the warriors of the wizard's bull tribe were like bulldozers. Everywhere they went, no one was left alive. 10 regular teams, each with 250 to 300 people, were led by their respective captains. They were like 10 sharp nails that pierced into the demon race's camp. In a split second, the entire place was turned upside down. In the sound of weapons clashing, heads flew high into the air. Strong bodies slowly fell to the ground. Their widened eyes showed a trace of infatuation with the land, but more than that, they were stunned. The demonized barbarians did not know what they were doing until they died. Why did they block the path of their former comrades? Why did they have to fight against them? In less than an incense stick's worth of time, the vanguard of the demon race was smashed into pieces. A bunch of trash. Sitting at the back of the army, Shorwaye did not panic. She was still as graceful as ever. Her beautiful eyes looked coldly at the demonic barbarians in front of her. There was no change in her expression. Unlike the barbarians, this was not the first time she fought against them. It was only when she destroyed the 4 major barbarian tribes. They were all led by the demon saint. The demon race was invincible. Wherever they went, there was no resistance. They easily destroyed the 4 tribes. However, now that she was in charge, she realized how difficult it was to deal with these barbarians. In terms of individual strength, these barbarians were not much different from the demon race. However, they were blessed by the wizard. The difference between the two was obvious. The various types of sorcery spells were indeed miraculous. However, she didn't care. They were just demonized slaves. She didn't care how many of them died. The key to this battle didn't lie with the demonized people. It didn't even lie with the 2 armies. Instead, it lay with the sorcerer who was poisoned by the green demon's poison. Looking into the distance, Shorwaye saw the fellow covered in green through the barrier of space. The corners of his mouth curled up. He felt that he should have reached his limit, right? Disperse. On the battlefield, Ahu roared, his voice piercing through the clouds. The barbarians stopped in their tracks when they heard the roar. They turned around and scattered in all directions in an orderly manner. There was no other reason. Behind the vanguard of the demon race, suddenly, a group of short and round guys with red skin jumped out. These guys had ferocious and excited expressions on their faces. It was as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Their bodies were bouncing on the ground like meatballs. Every time they bounced, they would be able to advance more than 100 feet. They were charging towards the barbarians without any fear of death. Red devils. Thanks to the knowledge that Yulu and Yulu had gained from the wizard temple, the barbarian warriors immediately gave the most accurate response when they saw these red-skinned guys. Otherwise, if they were to charge forward without knowing what was going on, There would definitely be heavy casualties. The regular squads circled around the red-skinned devils and continued to charge forward. The red devils were entangled and scattered as well. They all jumped and pounced towards the nearest group of people. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, in the sky, sharp arrows flew over, bringing with them the sound of breaking through the air. They were filled with killing intent. Every arrow accurately shot into the body of a red devil. The red devils that were shot were like ignited barrels of dynamite. Their originally red skin turned even redder. An extremely dangerous aura surged out from their bodies. Their round bodies suddenly expanded by several times. Then, with a series of booming sounds, they exploded one by one. It was as if they could blow up a hole in the void. Oh my God! Yang Kai looked at the sparks that bloomed in the sky. He couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat on his forehead. The power of the explosion of these exploding devils was not small. Although one or two of them were not very eye-catching, if 100 or so of them exploded together, even the Wizard King would be at a disadvantage. The demon race could really give birth to some strange people. The green devils were like this, and so were the red devils. On the other side, Sho Yae's complacent smile suddenly froze. Her beautiful eyes coldly looked at the riders in the sky. She gritted her teeth and said, "Damn it." According to her understanding, the other races should not have known anything about her side. However, when the red devils moved out, the other races made the most accurate response. The surprise attack of the red devils did not have any effect at all. Instead, they lost a lot of people for nothing. Swishing noises could be heard without an end. Those non-humankind cavalrymen mounted on those giant eagles were all highly skilled in archery. Even in the air, they could still maintain their accuracy. Every single arrow they shot would kill a red devil that leaped into the air, saving the lives of their warriors. Kill them. Sho Yae waved her hand. The clouds of black mist behind him suddenly disappeared into the void. After a short while, a short and small figure appeared on one side of an air cavalryman. At the same time, he directly slashed his pitch-black dagger towards the neck of this air cavalryman who was caught off guard. The dagger was incomparably sharp. Even Yang Kai's body had been slightly injured by it, but if these cavalrymen were to be hit by it, their heads would most likely be chopped off. The air rider sitting on the giant eagle and shooting arrows did not respond. His sharp eyes were still locked on to a red devil below, and he fired an arrow. Just as the demon race rider was about to succeed, another dagger suddenly appeared in the void and accurately blocked the neck of the air rider. With a clang, when the two daggers collided, the demon race rider who launched the sneak attack frowned and retreated vigilantly. He was a natural killer and assassin. He would only launch an attack at the safest time, so he was very surprised that someone could block his attack. Looking up, he saw a petite girl suddenly appear beside the air rider. Her figure was delicate, and her waterfall-like long hair fluttered in the wind. Strangely, she was holding a dagger in each hand, one facing the other. She stood there weakly, as if she would be blown away by the wind. She was actually holding two daggers. The demon race assassin frowned. As an assassin, he naturally knew the difficulty of controlling two daggers. This was a fellow assassin, and an extremely skilled one at that. He could not help but lick the corner of his mouth, and a sense of excitement welled up in his heart. He wanted to compete with her. Slaughter. The girl suddenly opened her mouth. Her voice was low and sweet, and she slightly raised her head with a pious expression, as if she was praying to an unknown god. What? The demon race assassin was stunned. Feast. As soon as she finished speaking, the girl danced like a butterfly. Her posture was elegant and beautiful, and anyone who saw it could not help but be immersed in it, enjoying the pleasure brought by this dance. Her black hair fluttered in the wind, and cold light overflowed. The demon race assassin, however, was not in the mood to appreciate it. He only felt cold all over, and his hands and feet were trembling. As an assassin, one must have an extremely strong psychological quality. He was one of the best assassins, and was especially outstanding in this aspect. Therefore, under normal circumstances, his state of mind would not fluctuate in the slightest. But at this moment, he seemed to have seen an extremely shocking scene. At the same time that he was terrified, He actually revealed a trace of satisfaction, as if he had heard the Tao in the morning and could die in the evening. He saw the most exquisite mystery of the assassination path. Streaks of cold light bloomed densely in the air. In a flash, they covered an area of 300 feet in radius. Sizzling sounds could be heard incessantly as streaks of blood strangely drifted out from the void. When the girl stopped moving, the daggers in her hands slid down a string of blood beads. Puff puff puff, in the void, blood spurted out. One after another, the figures of the demon race assassins suddenly appeared. Each of them had a stunned expression, as if they did not expect that someone would be able to find them in the void. Each of the demon race assassins only had one wound on their body, and those wounds were all fatal. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. One by one, the short demon race assassins fell from the sky and fell to the ground, turning into a bloody mess. It was a tragic sight. "What is your name?" The demon race assassin facing the girl asked calmly. The girl turned her head and glanced at him, and also calmly said, "Die." The demon race assassin whispered, as if he wanted to remember this name. In the next moment, a blood arrow shot out from his chest, and he fell straight to the ground. As he fell, his vitality quickly faded. Although Dai's action deterred the demon race assassins and saved the lives of many air cavalry, there were more demon race assassins hiding in the void. A ray of light flew from below and turned into a circle of light, enveloping all the air cavalry. In the next moment, the eyes of many air cavalry suddenly brightened, as if there was a torch burning in them. The light could illuminate all the shadows hidden in the darkness, making them unable to hide. Eagle Eye. After receiving the support of the wizards, the air cavalry immediately locked their eyes on the demon race assassins who were hiding in the surroundings, waiting for an opportunity to attack. Arrows were shot out one after another, reaping the lives of these assassins while they were still in a daze. The assassins naturally did not want to sit still and wait for death. Seeing that their bodies were exposed, they immediately launched an attack. The air cavalry riding the giant eagles nimbly avoided those assassins in the air, making their sneak attack fruitless. Yu and Lu, who came back to their senses, chanted an incantation at the same time. After 3 breaths, a bolt of lightning like a dancing snake appeared in front of the twins. That bolt of lightning was like a chain, crackling as it moved forward. Chapter 2857. One of the assassins couldn't dodge in time and was touched by the electric snake. Instantly, his hair stood on end, and a burnt smell came from his body. The electric snake exploded with the assassin's body as the center, turning into an electric net that covered the entire sky. The assassins of the demon race were paralyzed and trembling. The air cavalry that was being chased didn't even look back. They shot arrows backward. The powerful arrows shot into the chests of the demon race assassins and came out from their backs, leaving bloody holes. A nebula lightning bolt found all the assassins of the demon race. On the contrary, the air cavalry of her own clan weren't affected at all. The exquisite control of the Rain and Dew twins over the wizard's spells was evident. Without any worries, the aerial cavalry once again displayed astonishing combat strength, continuously providing strong and powerful support to their companions below. Shouye sent out 3 waves of assassins in a row, but they didn't kill any air cavalry. Instead, they lost many people. She was furious. On the battlefield, the demon race and the barbarians had officially clashed. The demonized demons were the vanguard. The strategy of the red demons at the back didn't have any effect. Instead, the barbarians broke through and penetrated deep into their own territory. The demon race had no choice but to resist with all their might. The Sandmen relied on their magical ability to travel through the earth to constantly create chaos on the battlefield. It also had some effect, causing the Wizards' Bull clan to inevitably suffer some losses. However, with the support of the life chain, the life force of all the barbarians in the 10 regular teams coexisted. Therefore, even if someone suffered a fatal injury, they wouldn't die immediately. Instead, under the effect of spreading the injury, their life force would be replenished by the other members of their clan. At this point in the battle, the demon race had suffered hundreds of casualties. On the other hand, not a single barbarian fell. The life chain was indeed the most important wizard spell in the large-scale battle of the barbarians. With such a wizard spell connecting them, the Wizards' Bull clan dared to fight even if they were facing a giant dragon. Shorwaye couldn't sit still anymore. She paid a heavy price for her rash decision. At the beginning of the battle, she thought that with the surprise of the red demons, she would be able to quickly win. Victory would soon be decided, but he did not expect that the red devils he sent out would not have any effect at all. The shadow demon clansmen that had set off after him were also slaughtered by the other party like falling flowers and flowing water. Although the two armies were about the same in terms of numbers, the difference in their true combat strength was like night and day. Shorwaye had no choice but to mobilize her strongest team. When the bestial roar rang out, the ground began to tremble. The cavalrymen of the demon race charged out like a mighty army of thousands of horses. They were tall, and their bodies were wrapped in black gas. They were mounted on ferocious-looking magical beasts, and they rampaged through the battlefield. Not a single barbarian was able to stop them. Wherever they passed, people would be thrown off their horses. The demon race's declining situation was gradually being reversed. The rest of the demon race was led by this group of cavalrymen. They pounced on the barbarian tribe and pushed the front line forward. The arrows shot by the cavalrymen did not have much effect. The magical beasts had thick skin, and the arrows were like tickles to them. "It's our turn," Rain and Dew said at the same time, and their expressions were solemn. More than a dozen wizards of different levels straightened their backs. Some of the older wizards were better, but the younger ones were a little nervous. It was their first time on a real battlefield, and they kept seeing people die. This was a huge impact on them. But if they wanted to stop the momentum of the demon race's cavalrymen, they could only rely on them now. The guards escorted more than a dozen wizards to the battlefield. Shorwaye looked over and frowned. She did not know what the barbarians were doing. But there was an uneasy feeling lingering in her heart. "You're finished." A voice suddenly came from not far away. Shorwaye was shocked. When she turned her head to look, she immediately saw a green guy appear beside her out of nowhere. Shorwaye almost jumped up. Even with her strength, she did not notice how the other party appeared here. If the other party had launched a sneak attack, would she have been able to block it? Probably, maybe, but when the two armies were fighting, why is this guy not guarding the rear, but suddenly running over to my side? As if she thought of something, Shorwaye pursed her lips and smiled. "Have you considered joining the arms of the great demon god?" Yang Kai turned his head to look at her and grinned. "I'm still thinking about it. Of course, if you can cure me of the green poison, I will consider it more sincerely." Shorwaye sneered. "Don't be wishful thinking. There is no way to cure the green poison, unless you become my slave." Yang Kai frowned. "Is this the only way?" Shorwaye said, "Only this one." Yang Kai nodded. Shorwaye smiled charmingly and said, "These 2 days haven't been easy, have they? To be honest, I'm a little surprised that you can still be conscious after 2 days. But the more you insist, the more pain you will suffer." Yang Kai sighed. "I'm in so much pain right now." Shorwaye tilted her head. "I can't see it." Yang Kai grinned and said, "Men always have to act strong, don't they?" Shorwaye smiled. "You are indeed qualified to be my slave. I can assure you that after I transform you, I will preserve your own consciousness. There won't be any difference compared to before." Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. "Retain my consciousness? But why did my demonized clansmen?" Shorwaye curled her lips and showed a disdainful expression. "They are nothing. They are just a bunch of trash. Naturally, they are not worth my effort. But you are different. An expert like you is more suitable for having a clear mind. I am willing to pay a price. You are so good to me. I don't know how to repay you." Yang Kai smiled gently. Shorwaye giggled. "Just be obedient. Then, shall we begin now?" Yang Kai turned to look at her. Shorwaye's smile disappeared. She looked up at the battlefield and saw that the demon race had suddenly fallen into a disadvantageous position. After the dozen shamans took action, a series of powerful witchcraft were cast, and the demon cavalry was forced to retreat. The advantage that the demon cavalry had gained before was gone. If it weren't for the Sandmen constantly appearing and disappearing to cause trouble, bringing various restraints to the barbarians, the cavalry would have been wiped out very quickly. But even so, the situation of the demon race was not optimistic. More than half of the demon race's forces were dead or injured. The losses were constantly increasing. On the other hand, the barbarians were getting braver and their morale was high. I need to pay a price to take you as my slave. What can you pay? Shorwaye suddenly turned to look at Yang Kai. What do you want? Yang Kai asked. Shorwaye raised her hand and pointed forward. I want to see your sincerity. Only with enough sincerity can you earn my trust. Decide for yourself. You don't have much time left. Yang Kai laughed. That's easy. As soon as he finished speaking, he flew towards the battlefield. Wherever he passed, anyone who blocked his way would be killed with a single punch. None of the strong demons were able to stop his advance. Shorwaye did not like this bloody scene. Instead, it made her even more interested. When she looked at Yang Kai, her eyes bloomed with a strange light. The demon race clearly knew that he was not to be trifled with. They all retreated. A short while later, Yang Kai arrived at the battlefield where the two armies were clashing. Master, why are you? Rain suddenly noticed Yang Kai. She was stunned. Did you come from that side? Her camp was at the back, but Yang Kai clearly came from the demon race's side. Moreover, as the commander-in-chief of an army, it was not wise for him to appear on the battlefield where the two armies were facing each other instead of commanding from the rear and strategizing from within the tent. When she was about to persuade him, she suddenly felt a chill in her heart. She vaguely felt that something was wrong. Lu also felt it. She raised her head and looked at Yang Kai vigilantly. Master, what are you going to do? Yang Kai smiled and looked at the twins. Come with me. The twins were silent. Then they slowly shook their heads. The more than 10 wizards were also confused by the situation. They looked at each other. It's not good to disobey orders. Wizard, did you forget what the master said when he handed you over to me? Yang Kai looked at them with a gloomy look. There was a sense of dignity in his eyes. Rain said in a deep voice, if the master is really thinking about the barbarian race, we will not disobey. But now don't you want to join the demon race? What? The more than 10 wizards were shocked. They could not believe what they just heard. They all looked at Yang Kai, hoping that he would deny it. But what made them feel like falling into an ice cellar was that Yang Kai actually smiled. You are very observant. Rain said. There is only one way to get rid of the green demon's poison. That is to be turned into a demon. Master, you have really disappointed us. In a few words, the more than 10 wizards instantly understood what was going on. The wizard Master Ball was poisoned by the green demon's poison. Obviously, he did not want to die like this. That was why he had to join the demon race. The twins seemed to have seen through his thoughts. What should they do? This was the Wizard Bull's first real battle. The 12 teams worked together and were about to win. But at this crucial moment, their leader wanted to betray them. The sudden change made everyone lose their ability to think. Their minds were in a daze. You are very smart. No wonder you can enter the wizard temple. But even if you know, what can you do? Yang Kai smiled and reached out his hand to cover the twins. When his hand reached down, it was like a curtain of light, blocking the light in front of everyone's eyes. The twins' faces changed. Even though they knew that the wizard Master Ball was very strong, they did not expect him to be this strong. The two of them did not even have time to think before their bodies stiffened. They did not know what kind of technique Yang Kai used. Chapter 28:58. Yang Kai stretched out his hand and caught the twins as easily as pinching 2 chicks. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the twins were terrified and couldn't help but move closer to Yang Kai. They were immediately taken away by Yang Kai and flew towards the back of the demon race. The remaining wizard and wizard apprentices watched all of this with their eyes wide open. A chill spread out from their paws as they froze on the spot. Shaw Ya's smug laughter resounded throughout the battlefield, extremely harsh to the ears. When a figure flashed in front of them, Butterfly blocked the way. Yu Lu showed a look of surprise and desire at the same time and said in unison, "Master, Wizard Bull has defected to the demon race, quickly stop here." After this period of contact, Yu Lu knew that Butterfly was also a great wizard and was on the same level as Wizard Bull. If she made a move, perhaps it would have some effect. Butterfly turned a deaf ear and stood there without moving. She just looked at Yang Kai indifferently. Yang Kai also stopped and narrowed his eyes at Butterfly. "You want to stop me?" Butterfly was silent for a while and silently moved aside. The light of hope in Yu Lu's eyes suddenly disappeared. Yang Kai nodded and passed by Butterfly with Yu Lu. "Be careful." Butterfly whispered softly like a mosquito. If one didn't listen carefully, they wouldn't even know that she was talking. Yang Kai was already far away and soon disappeared. "The battle is not over yet. What are you waiting for?" Butterfly looked at the 13 wizard below and shouted. She was the first to move. Her body fluttered and moved around the battlefield. Sometimes she used her extraordinary agility to reap the lives of the demon race members. Sometimes her hands bloomed with the light of wizard spells, giving the barbarian soldiers all kinds of buffs. Seeing her like this, the 13 wizard and wizard apprentices found their backbone again and gradually stabilized their position. The incantation sounded again and the light of wizard spells flashed repeatedly. On one side of the battlefield, Yang Kai floated to the ground and waved his hand. Yu Lu fell to the ground. The twins' eyes were burning with hatred as if there was a volcano hidden in them. They looked at Yang Kai and then at the scantily clad Shaw Ya. She clenched her teeth. On one hand, she felt humiliated by their situation, on the other hand, she was indignant at Yang Kai's cowardice. If they knew that this Wizard Bull was such a person, they would never agree to follow him. Is this sincerity enough? Yang Kai looked at Shaw Ya and asked. Shaw Ya, Yu Lu looked at Yu Lu and then looked at Yang Kai. She slowly shook her head. "Why is?" Shaw Ya raised her hand slightly and casually pointed at Lu. "Kill her, Yu Lu. Kill her and I'll believe you." Shaw Ya tilted her head and looked at Yang Kai with a hint of provocation in her eyes. She was not a fool. Although this barbarian tribe great shaman was poisoned by the green devil and showed the intention of surrendering, if it was only to this extent, it was not enough to win her trust. This was the last test. If this barbarian great wizard could really kill her subordinates, then his intention to surrender would be unquestionable. On the other hand, this was a trick to get closer to her. Shaw Ya was conflicted. On one hand, she hoped that this barbarian great wizard would fight to the end and would rather die than surrender. Prey that struggled between life and death was the best prey. On the other hand, she felt that it would be a pity if he died like this. She hoped that he would listen to her. But a slave that listened to her too much. What was the use of having him? She did not lack such people under her command. Therefore, she did not know what decision she wanted this barbarian great wizard to make. She carefully observed him, hoping to see a hesitant and struggling expression on his face. That would make her feel more or less happy. But what surprised her was that Yang Kai did not say a word after hearing her order and directly walked forward. There was no sign of hesitation. The twins' expressions changed. Yu forced herself to stand in front of her sister. Her beautiful eyes stared at Yang Kai and said sternly, "Kill me, let her go." Yang Kai stood in front of her like an insurmountable mountain. He looked down at her and nodded slightly. The sisterly love is touching. Unfortunately, at the same time, Yu was sent flying by Yang Kai with a kick. She flew more than 10 feet and fell heavily on the ground. After rolling a few times, blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. This is Master Shaw Ya's first order. I have to obey it. When Yang Kai was talking, he had already grabbed Lu's slender neck and slowly lifted her up. Lu struggled with all her strength. Her face was red. But with her strength restrained, how could she shake off Yang Kai's grip with her own body? Her movements of using her hands and feet looked so funny. Let her go. Yu stood up not far away and screamed. She wanted to rush over but was firmly held down by a black shadow. Young Kai's strength was getting stronger and stronger. His wizard power began to fluctuate. He was emitting an extremely dangerous aura. As if their hearts were connected, Lu struggled to turn her head and look at her sister. Yu was also looking at them sadly. When their eyes met, Lu opened her mouth slightly but no sound came out. Yu knew that she was saying goodbye to her. No. Yu shouted hysterically. Peng, a cloud of blood mist suddenly exploded. Lu, who was lifted up by young Kai, directly exploded. Not even her bones were left. Only blood and minced meat dripped down. Yu's screams stopped abruptly. She looked at the blood mist as if she had lost her soul. She couldn't believe that her sister, who was so close to her a moment ago, would end up in such a miserable state. 2 lines of blood tears silently fell from the corner of her eyes. She didn't cry. Her eyes became cold and piercing. She looked at young Kai coldly. Her eyes were filled with hatred. If it was possible, she was willing to bite this wizard to death bit by bit. She would eat all his muscles and flesh, drink all his blood. She would even chew his bones and swallow them into her stomach. Ha, ha 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 ha. Shouye suddenly let out a burst of crazy laughter. She seemed to be very happy. It was as if the scene in front of her had touched her sensitive nerves and gave her an unprecedented satisfaction. Young Kai ignored Yu's gaze. He turned to look at Shouye and said, "Master, is this sincerity enough?" "It's enough." Shouye nodded with satisfaction. Only now did she truly believe that young Kai was here to surrender. "Come here." Shouye called out as if she was summoning her pet. Young Kai walked to her and stood in front of her. "Kneel down," Shouye said again. Young Kai frowned and shook his head. "I'm sorry. My legs hurt. I can't kneel down." The smile on Shouye's face instantly turned cold. She stared at young Kai coldly and said, "How dare you disobey my orders? Do you want to die?" Young Kai said indifferently, "In life, some things can be given up, but some things must be persevered. Master, you are a woman. You don't understand the perseverance of men." Shouye's lips curled up. "What a joke. You can even kill your own subordinates. Why are you not willing to kneel to me?" Young Kai shrugged. "I'd rather die." The two of them looked at each other. Young Kai's expression was calm, while Shouye's was dignified. After a long time, Shouye curled her lips. She realized that this great wizard was a tough guy. He had no intention of kneeling to her in order to survive. His perseverance did not make her angry. Instead, it made her excited. She felt a sense of accomplishment when she tamed such an unruly slave. "All right. Since you have shown your sincerity, it's my turn now." Saying so, Shouye lightly stepped forward and gracefully arrived in front of young Kai, reaching out her hand and placing it on his forehead. A dark demonic chi suddenly flowed out from Shouye's fingertips. The demonic chi was similar to the demonic chi that the wizard encountered in the abandoned village. In comparison, Shouye's demonic chi was undoubtedly more outstanding, purer, and more corrosive. After forcing out the demonic chi, Shouye's face suddenly showed a hint of fatigue. It was obvious that it had taken a toll on her. The demonic chi was like a living creature. It circled around Shouye's fingertips a few times before disappearing into young Kai's body. Young Kai let out a muffled groan and staggered back 2 steps. A faint black color immediately spread out from his body. The black color was like a burning flame. It burned the demonic green poison into nothingness wherever it passed. The lush green light disappeared and was replaced by a strange and heavy darkness. "That's it." Young Kai frowned slightly. Shouye chuckled and said, "Since you can withstand my demonic chi without dying, you are now a member of my demon race. However, to become my slave, you will need to add something else." Young Kai said, "I am willing to serve under master." Shouye said with satisfaction, "Very good." As she spoke, she opened her mouth and spat out a fist-sized object. Yu, who had been watching from the sidelines, narrowed her eyes. The object did not look like anything else. It looked like a heart. A pitch-black heart that was beating rhythmically. Shouye held it in her hand. It was gently beating. Every time it beat, It would send out a powerful force. Moreover, it also contained a mysterious power that would make people feel uneasy and dizzy. Kai Yang, on the other hand, watched with great interest. Sho Wei smiled and said, "This is my demonic heart. Is it okay for you to take it out like this?" Yang Kai asked with concern, "Will it affect you in any way?" Sho Wei laughed and said, "In my demon race, every expert who has cultivated to a certain level has their own demonic heart. As long as the demonic heart is not destroyed, the demon race will not die. Didn't your ancestors tell you this?" Yang Kai said, "This is the first time I've heard of it." Looking at the demon heart with a burning gaze, Yang Kai asked, "In other words, this thing is your foundation, right?" "That's right." Sho Wei nodded slightly. "Can I have a look?" Yang Kai looked at the demonic heart curiously. Sho Wei raised her head. Her gaze was deep, as if she wanted to see if he was just asking casually or if he had other plans. Yu suddenly held her breath, and her expression became nervous. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.